What is going on, go-getters? In this week's episode, we talked to Austin Sienkiewicz and Kyle Burrell.
Kyle Burrell is the CEO and founder of a company he named Neuralytics AI, and Austin Sienkiewicz is the head coach of esports at Marywood University.
Yeah, guys, in this podcast, we had an absolutely mind-blowing conversation with these two individuals. Many points in this conversation, I was just left speechless with everything that they're working on and all the crazy ideas flowing through their heads. So make sure this is an intelligent watch. So make sure you're ready. Grab your popcorn. This podcast was
Maybe
fire.
Pen and paper, you know?
Yeah, take down some notes. But we hope you guys enjoy. Like, subscribe, share with a friend. To the moon, baby. Boom. Go-Getters Podcast. We're back. Yes, hometown, Wilkes-Barre. We're here with Kyle and Austin. How you guys doing today?
Doing well.
Good. That's good. So I wanted to take a minute because I think you guys, like I was saying before we kick this off, you guys operate in a very interesting field. So I wanted to start this podcast by giving you guys a few minutes to like describe yourselves, who you are, what you do, and we could just jump right into from there.
Kyle, go for it.
So I guess I'll start off. So
try to be conscious of the mic too. Try to make sure you're talking to that mic.
Yeah, you can hold it. You can move it around. Whatever works best for you.
Yeah, so my name is Kyle Burrell. I graduated at the University of Scranton, degrees in applied mathematics and computer science. After college, I spent about 5 years in a artificial intelligence startup in Scranton, doing a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence work for the government. And then I ended up starting my own company, Neuralytics AI, which is where I met Austin. And we've been doing some stuff with Rocket League training, next-gen Rocket League training, and trying to train your brain for sports, esports, any endeavor that you can think of.
Okay.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, no, it is. It's crazy. But go ahead, say what you're going to say.
No, and Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, it's hard to follow that, but I'm Austin Sienkiewicz. I graduated from Misericordia, degree in sport management.
Okay.
I'm currently working on my master's, graduate this Saturday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. I've been working with Marywood University as a Rocket League coach for the past year now.
Okay.
And yeah, we're working to kind of develop some training packs and some things in the sports field. So
we're
definitely excited about that.
So how did you guys get tapped in or connected with each other?
So I was reaching out to some different colleges in the area with Rocket League teams to sort of kickstart my research for my company. And I started off with Lackawanna College and Teddy Delaney, who was the esports program director down there. And we worked for a few months together, and we still are working together. And then after a few months, they hooked me up with Jacob Adler at Marywood, who's the esports program director at Marywood. And, we had a conversation, myself, Jacob, and Austin. Then we had the players come in, Austin's Rocket League players, and we started talking about some different drills, training concepts, different, ideas in Rocket League, and sort of just took off from there.
So your company's called Neuralytics AI?
Neuralytics AI. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So what made you decide you wanted to get into AI, and then how did that evolve into getting into esports?
Yeah, so I think I kind of just fell into AI. So like I said, I had the double major applied mathematics and computer science. In fact, I actually went to school just for applied mathematics. I didn't really have necessarily an interest in computer science.
Okay.
It was just sort of like, okay, I like mathematics. I'm good with numbers. Yeah. And I had to take a couple computer science courses for that major. And I was like, I kind of like computer science too. I like programming. I think this could be a really useful skill to have. So I got a minor in it first, and then I said, I want to do a double major. And they told me, well, you can't do a double major. It's not going to work out. It's just too much going on. It's not compatible. And I said, well, I'm still going to do it anyways. Yeah. And so I did it. And so after that, I was looking for a job and actually an internship to start off, and I couldn't get anything. I was applying everywhere. I had a high GPA and just couldn't get my foot in the door. So finally I reached out to one of my professors, and he said, I've got a friend who's doing a startup in Scranton with like artificial intelligence and machine learning work, and they just got a contract with the DoD. And I was like, well, can you get me in there?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I can try, And long story short, a few months later, I was working with this guy. We sort of hit it off. We were building some really cool stuff, doing some really cool projects. And I just sort of became the AI guy from there. And then, I started this company, Neuralytics. So my background from high school was more in traditional sports. I was a basketball player, competitive basketball player. And, one of the biggest pain points that I had as a basketball player was in-game decision-making.
Yeah.
I felt like physically I could train for hours every day and get my physical skills up to, I felt as good as anyone else that I was going to go up against just about. But when I get into a game, I'd have this tendency to freeze up or overanalyze the situation, overthink things. And anyone who's played sports will know that once you start to think about the situation, you miss out on the opportunity.
Yes.
It plays over. So that caused me a lot of pain, a lot of frustration. And when I was working at the AI startup, we did a project in the enhancement of sleep using artificial intelligence. And that's where I came across these, portable EEG, electroencephalogram devices, which basically measure your brainwaves in real time. They're consumer devices that you can buy off the shelf. And so I was like, okay, that's really interesting, And a couple of years later, I came back to it. I was just sort of like gravitated back to it. And I was like, I wonder if I can use this to help solve that problem that I was having in basketball. If I can use this to identify the differences between those guys that can just go out there and just play instinctively, make all the right reads, all the right decisions, and just dominate naturally, versus the guys who are just as good, if not better than those other guys, but they just can't perform because they're not making those decisions. So I thought, okay, using these headbands, can we take that data and my artificial intelligence machine learning background and use it to identify the differences between those two types of players, and then take that even a step further and find out how to bridge that gap.
Okay.
And, train someone's brain to make decisions more effectively in game situations when it counts.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
That is incredible.
So then working on that, I came to the Lackawanna College Venture Lab with Mike Jensen in the Venture Lab. And, I told him I have this idea. I haven't done anything in business. I've worked in a startup for the time. It was like 3 or 4 years. But I don't have any business background, so I need some help with that. And they said, okay. So we talked through the idea. And one of the issues that we sort of came with was in traditional sports, you're moving around a lot, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of physical aspects that you can't really control, right? You can't change gravity or, physical aspects of the world. It's really difficult to control that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was an issue for our brain analytics, and like, how could we control that to make it easier? And Mike Jensen said to me, he's like, well, did you think about esports? Because we have an esports team here at Lackawanna College. And I said, that's interesting. I was never really into esports, but it's an interesting idea. He's like, well, I could set you up with Teddy Delaney. He's the program director, esports program director here. And, you could talk with him and see what you think about it. So we set up that meeting. We had a nice discussion. I met with his couple of his Rocket League players, and just sort of never looked back from there. It's so much easier because now they're not moving, right? They're basically still just looking at a screen. And also we can control that environment precisely, right? We can make the ball appear at precise times, precise positions. We can make the car appear at precise times, precise positions. We can track all of the data. Every single movement, every input that you put to the car, we can track that. Every update in the game, where your car is, how fast it's moving, where the ball is, how fast it's moving, we can track all of that. And we can use that to help guide our analysis of the brain data, synchronize it with the brain data and use that to help guide our analysis. So it's made things a lot easier. Now, we are still hoping to eventually, once we get a good grasp on this in the esports realm, to expand that out into traditional sports, basketball, things like that, especially using things like virtual reality. But so the esports has just made it a lot easier for us to.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. So I guess that's where you come into play then, Austin. So you are I believe, the head coach at the Marywood University team. So describe us a little bit about that. Like, basically just describe us your realm and what you operate. Because I'm very fascinated by esports. I've always been a kid who loved video games and loved kind of like the field at which they take video games down, everything they do with them, content creation, esports, how they implement it into college. Like, it's just, I love that. So I want you to describe a little bit like what you do. And
yeah, absolutely. So I got started with esports. We're going back with Rocket League, probably about 2018, 2019, right before COVID and everything. Yeah. And I got super passionate about Rocket League because Rocket League is one of those games where it's the most traditional sports. Yeah. It's kind of the most similar in the sense that it's a physics-based game, team play, and it's very difficult to get good at because you need to spend the thousands of hours to play it, and that's kind of like my draw for it. That's why I got into it. And then I saw that there was a position at Marywood to go and coach, and I was like, "This is interesting." I don't know, if I'm very cut out for this, but I tried it, and I got the job, and then I went over there, and ever since then, it's kind of been a really cool experience to be able to kind of coach, my guys and go forward with that. But esports in general is it's such a cool field, and I really enjoy not only playing, but just coaching my guys and taking them to the next level and teaching them kind of everything that I've learned throughout traditional sports in my time coaching. That's one thing I really enjoy, just I guess specifically about the game Rocket League, is how I always describe it to my friends it's the simplest game ever for base level players, but
beyond that scope, it's like one of the most complex games I've ever played. So it's very good for a casual fan if you just want to sit down, pick up a controller, play a game. But if you're somebody like yourself who's very interested in getting better at things and like your performance or just over time gaining new abilities, getting better, Rocket League is the game for you because there's just so many different areas, I guess, in which you could just become better overall. So, yeah, Rocket League's a very interesting game. What is it like being the coach and like not being the person that do you still play a lot of Rocket League?
Yeah. So when I started coaching, it was very weird to enter like the coaching realm because I was so focused on like getting better and playing. And as soon as I reached like a grand champ level, which is probably like top 1%, and I think right now I'm probably like top 0.6, 0.7%.
That's insane.
And then I kind of took a step back from playing, kind of focus on my players, and that was like very difficult at first.
Yeah,
because I was like, oh, I want to keep improving, keep doing this, but I'm like, I got to take a step back and make sure that these guys progress and get better.
So that's like what you do now. Basically, just encompasses making sure that all your players are performing. I guess being the best players that they can be. So are you like in charge of basically managing what these people, not necessarily managing, but like, are you helping these people with stuff outside of the realm of just Rocket League and esports as like a typical, like say a football coach would?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. So like, it's not like we're doing like strength and conditioning. It's not like that, but you're not really going into like the physical side of it, but it's so mental heavy. And like one of my players now definitely struggles with like the mental aspect. And going through like baseball and a lot of traditional sports like that, like there's a lot of things that I learned in terms of like controlling nerves, and being in like a high intensity environment. Like we just had our championship last Friday, and we ended up losing. And the other team was way more experienced, and you could tell right out of the gate that they were just way more experienced and they were ready for that type of environment. And we were just a little slow to start, and then we picked it up kind of later as the series went on, but we were just a little bit too late in experience and. In that department. So.
Yeah. So what is it like for the team that beat you? Were they have they been doing it longer? Like as an organization, I guess you could say, like, have they been competing together and like their team unit just longer than you guys have been? Because it is still, esports is still relatively new.
Yeah. So for the organization we play under, we play for NECC. That's the league we're in.
Okay.
And they basically, it's all based on rank. So there's Navigators League, Emergence, Challengers, and then Champions.
Yeah.
And we're in the Emergence League.
Okay.
They came down from Challengers, which is like, if you're familiar with like the ranks and stuff.
Yeah.
It was all like Champ 3s and GC 1s are Emergence. And then once you get into like Challengers, it's like GC 2 and above. So they came down into Emergence.
Okay.
And that was the team that we were playing. So they're more experienced in playing like a lot of higher level teams. So when we played them, it was like they were definitely just more experienced.
Okay. Just for my ego, do you guys play or operate with anybody that are diamonds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay. Now I feel better. Because
how do you structure an esports practice or a Rocket League practice in comparison to traditional sports, physical sports?
Yeah. So it honestly depends on what we're working on. Obviously, like it starts like we don't like stretch or anything, but I guess like the Rocket League equivalent of stretching is kind of like just doing like general training to get like your like your hands warm, like your mechanics,
like your free play, your what do they call them? Like not like trials, but like the little like custom maps and stuff that they do,
and everything like that. And especially on PC, like there's so many more options of just like branching out and doing like very focused training, whether it's like. You want to work on dribbling or shooting,
right?
Or just like aerial control,
right?
There's ways to go about it. There's ways to do it on like console too, but there's much more access to kind of advanced training on PC.
Because I would imagine you have more like you have more of a window to like tweak with the actual game itself on PC, right?
Yeah.
So that's like how they are making these crazy map packs, and I guess that specifically then ties in with you because that's what you guys are trying to create now, right?
Yep.
You guys are trying to create and explain us with that a little bit because I know you were talking earlier about the like the neural waves with people and this technology that you guys are using, and you guys are using that to specifically try to come up and test like these new training packs for Rocket League players to play, right?
Well, so there's sort of like two aspects to what we're doing. So number one is the brain analytics. Right?
Yeah.
So being able to put a headband on a player while they're going through specialized drills or scenarios, and being able to analyze how their brain is processing that information and how their brain's making decisions. And then how do we train that?
Yeah.
So that's one branch. That's a much more complex thing.
Yeah.
That's currently under a pilot study right now at Lackawanna College, which we just started like 2 weeks ago, I think. So like that pilot study is for collecting that data and figuring out what those differentiators are between the high performers and the low performers. Then on the other end of it is the more like right now thing that we're really focusing on right now is like how do we create the custom training scenarios or drills themselves that can actually help improve specific skills in the game that maybe aren't well addressed by traditional training packs.
So are these training packs yielding results yet? So are you seeing any noticeable results, whether it's in yourself or any particular studies that you've done, or how does that work?
So a couple of answers that I can give to that.
Okay.
So first off, Austin and I have been having his players go through this sort of training regimen for about 5 or 6 weeks. They went through just sort of like a standard, like, flying through rings.
It's the 6 tier course thing that you have.
If you go on our blog, the Level Up blog, medium.com, it's we call it the 6-minute abs of Rocket League training.
Yep.
It's basically six quick exercises. You do them for about 5 minutes each, and it's a quick can be used as a warm up and also as a training method to improve your basic fundamental skills. So we had them do that for about 5 or 6 weeks, and now actually this Thursday we're going to start implementing my drills and my training program into their regimen for the summer, and we're going to see how they improve from that. But I will say, as a sort of small case study, so first there was myself. We were working on a plugin which basically blinks your car, so the car goes in and out. So you can only see it for a short period of time,
right?
And then it becomes invisible.
Wow.
And you got to do that while you're trying to maintain control of your car while doing, driving through rings or doing an air dribble map or whatever it may be. And the other thing that we did on top of that is we added in a second option, which when the car blinks, not only do you lose sight of your car, but your sensitivity also changes too.
Really?
Yeah, Brian. I think Brian went through this.
Yeah.
Right.
So he didn't do the sensitivity one. He just did the blinking.
Okay.
But so the sensitivity, that pairing that together, now it sounds crazy or even counterintuitive at first, right? But so I went through it having not really ever done the rings before because I'm not really much of a Rocket League player. And I went from, in the beginning, I could hardly get to the second level on Lethamer's giant rings pack.
Yep.
I could barely get past the second level on that.
Yeah.
I did this for about 15 minutes with that plugin turned on. Restarted it. I got to level 6 in under 3 minutes.
Wow.
And I just had a guy down at Lackawanna College today who was, I think he was at Champ 2 was his rank.
Yeah.
So he went through the study, and afterwards I'm like, I'd like to get your thoughts on something and see, have you tried this out? And I told him what it was, and he's like, I don't see how that's going to help me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, just give it a shot. And he's like, all right. So now he hadn't done the rings map too much before. He was an experienced Rocket League player, but hadn't done the rings map too much before. So the whole time we were going through the study and he was doing the rings for like 15 minutes, he didn't get past I think stage 4 or something like that. And he kept making mistakes, kept dying. And now he did this plugin with the visual, the blinking of the car and the sensitivity randomization for 5 minutes. And I had him reset it. I'm like, all right, now try it with just normal. Sensitivity is just static, and you could see your car the whole time. He's like, all right, I don't know how much this is going to help me, but whatever. He went through and he got to level 7 in under 3 minutes.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's a small sample size, it's a small case study, but I really think it's something. I think especially once we start tweaking it and playing around with it and figuring out the best way to set it up, I think it's something that's really going to help people improve their car control, their awareness, things like that. And it's all based on some recent research that I've seen in the sports training world.
Yeah.
So it's all about adaptiveness. There's this main idea, in the past where the traditional approach of sports training was just repetition,
Sure.
do the same thing every time, right? If you're a basketball player, you go to the gym and you shoot 1,000 jump shots the same exact way every time. And the idea is that the more you shoot it, the more consistent you're going to be with that.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing every time, so you're going to make it, right?
Yeah, the more muscle memory you'll be creating through those repetitions.
Exactly.
Sure.
But now they're having more recent studies show that the best performers actually aren't the ones that have the most consistent technique, that they're doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
The best performers are the ones who can adapt to changing conditions, because the conditions of the shot or whatever the task is are constantly changing. Even if they look like they're the same, you're shooting a free throw, say, so it should be the same thing every time. They're changing just enough to make it so that you have to be able to adapt to that and change your technique a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you're just training just repetition, and trying to get as consistent and do the same thing over and over again, you've got a fragile skill technique.
Yeah.
It's going to break down and when you actually go out and perform, because conditions are constantly changing.
Yeah.
So the idea of plugins like this that I developed or as it forces you to adapt. It changes things. Things are randomly adjusted constantly.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to adapt to that. So it helps you improve faster, and learn more, learn better in the sense that your technique is no longer this very fragile thing that can easily break down if something goes the slightest wrong. It's something that's much more robust to the slight variations that are constantly happening. So
then you would suggest that repetition along with adaptation would create the ideal scenario for enhancing your skills.
Yeah, so one of the terminologies that they use in the field, in the research, is repetition without repetition. So it's basically like you keep getting in repetitions, but you're not doing it the exact same way every time. You're adding variation,
slightly different each time.
You're adding constraints.
Now, in terms of the measurement of brain activity, so what particularly are you guys noticing when a certain region of the brain lights up? Like, what is that? What information is that giving you guys to then be able to take your data and then innovate from there? Like, what exactly are you guys seeing on that end that gives you the necessary information to continue to innovate this thing?
Yeah, so I will preface this with, we are in the very early stages of the brain analytics. Like I said, we just started our pilot study like a week or two ago. But the idea is a lot of the drills that we're using in that study, or the simulations, are based on existing white papers in EEG brain research. So, like one common thing that they'll do in brain research studies is they'll have someone look at, say, the flash of visual stimulus on the screen, right? Like a shape or something.
Sure.
And it might be a square or a circle. And you might say a square might appear 80% of the time and the circle 20% of the time. And so when you see that square appear on the screen, you have this, or when you see any shape appear on the screen, you have this positive deflection in the brainwave data about 300 milliseconds afterwards. And it's called the P300. And the amplitude and timing of that peak essentially can change depending on a number of things, including whether it's a square or a circle, whether it's the oddball or the target, as they call them, and also whether if you have different constraints to the task as well. That can all change what you're seeing in the brain data. So the idea is basically that we'll be able to find patterns like these in the brains of experts versus non-experts going through these drills, and be able to use those, see that maybe experts are having peaks in those components earlier than amateurs, or maybe the peaks are larger or smaller than amateurs.
Yeah. Are these peaks indicating familiarity with like situations or scenarios? So like if a ball is at a certain angle in this area of the field, that's like a familiar sight to make a reaction and to make a play on that ball or something like that. Is that what you're trying to explain?
It could. So another thing that's commonly, they look at what's called an N170 wave. So it's a negative deflection about 170 milliseconds after a visual stimulus. And the N170 is larger for faces, or one theory about why this happens is because you're more familiar with faces versus other objects. So if you show like pictures of houses or something like that. Now, there's also theories that it's larger just because it's a different part of the brain that's specialized for face processing. But there was one study in particular that had people looking at, they had bird experts, right, that were looking at pictures of birds and dogs. And they had dog experts that were also looking at pictures of birds and dogs. They would have an N170 in response to these images, but the size of that peak would be related to how familiar they were with the animal being displayed. So bird experts would have a larger peak than when they saw birds than they would when they saw dogs, and vice versa for the dog experts.
Can that spike be emotionally driven? Like,
can it be emotionally driven?
Like, do you think due to like I, for example, would think that I would recognize a dog and a bird just as equally as I could see a bird, I know it's a bird. I see a dog, I know it's a dog. You were saying they were peaking, I believe, lower. For if I was a dog expert, it would peak lower. If I was a dog, or if I was a dog expert and I was looking at a picture of a dog, can that be emotionally based? Like, because I'm more infatuated with like subject B, would I be more inclined to have my peak be lower for that thing?
It could be the case. I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that. I'm sure there's probably a lot of research that could give an argument one way or the other, but the way I sort of interpreted it when I saw it was more like you said, with experience and familiarity.
Okay.
I'm a bird expert, so I'm more familiar with birds. So there's, sort of more brain activity going on in a sense when a picture of a bird comes, is displayed.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you mentioned that these people who were looking at images of dogs and birds were experts on one or the other.
Yeah.
So like it seems that this brain activity is trying to understand how immediate your recognition is with something. And it's interesting because think about the brains of experts. Think about the brains of people who've mastered any particular craft, like a chess wizard or like a guy like Kobe or like a really renowned athlete. It almost seems as if their brain evolves to better understand whatever that craft is. It's almost as if like it's intertwined with that craft. They understand it on a level that's just far beyond every other person. Yeah. Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's not just about like peaks. That's one type of analysis known as event-related potential. Mm-hmm. So event-related because you have a bunch of events, you have a bunch of trials of this, and you average them all together, and you look at the brain's average response, and you find those peaks. There's other things like event-related synchronization or desynchronization, which is basically looking at the speed of oscillations in your brain. So like the brain works with oscillations, right? It fires and sort of fires again at a certain frequency. And so a lot of analysis that you look at will look at the frequency of the brain activity. And they split it up into different bands. Like alpha, I believe, is like 8 to 12 hertz, so 8 to 12 times per second. Mm-hmm. That's alpha activity. I believe theta is somewhere around like 3 to 7 times per second in oscillation. Gamma is like 12 to 24 or something like that. And these different bands of brain activity are correlated with different states of mind in a sense. So like alpha is often associated with like calmness and relaxation. Mm-hmm. Beta is more with like focused thinking kind of concentration. And so there's a lot of different things that I'll also mention one other particular type of brain activity that intrigued me in the research that I've been trying to recreate with this Rocket League stuff is, so have you ever been walking down a hall and like sort of like ran into someone, you sort of give that like, whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
You like have that like conflict in your brain. Yeah. Like, do I go right? Do I go left?
Yeah.
So there was one research lab with Mike Cohen is the guy's name, who was a researcher, and he worked on, identifying these brain patterns associated with like conflict resolution like that. And so what they did was they had a study where, have you ever heard of the Stroop effect?
The Stroop effect?
The Stroop effect.
Never.
So that's like when you flash a word on the screen and it'll be like a word like blue or red, like a color like that. But the color of the text won't necessarily be the same as the word. And you have to say, respond with either what the, I don't recall if it's the color of the text and not what the word says, or if it's what the word says and not what the color is. But one of those two. So you have this like sort of conflict, right? That you're trying to, okay.
They used to always mess with my mind.
Right. Yeah. So what they did was they had two different buttons. So it was either, I don't know, red or blue or whatever, right? Let's just say. And one button would respond red and the other button would respond blue. And while they were doing this, they measured their muscle activity in both arms. So they could see when they would go to respond a certain way, red or blue, they could see that. And they could also see when they had just like this sort of like micro twitch where they like kind of wanted to respond red, but then they switched and went to blue.
That's interesting.
When they looked at those trials where they had that micro twitch, where they had that sort of conflict where they were like, blue, no red.
Yeah.
They looked at the brain responses to that. And what they found was this pattern they called midfrontal theta. So midfrontal because it's, in this sort of midfrontal region of the scalp right here. One of the funny things the guy said to describe where it is, he's like, if you ever go like, doh, like, doh, it's right there, right where you hit your head.
Yeah.
And so like that spot, the oscillations, the power in the brain oscillations in the theta band, so like 3 to 7 times per second, I believe is what they split it down to, would increase when they were more conflicted like that versus the states where they were just like instantly blue or red. They just had that instantaneous response. So I'm wondering if there's a similar thing in Rocket League. You're going through a simulation or a scenario, and there's that critical point comes where you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Like, do I charge the ball? Do I rotate backwards? What do I do? If higher level players, or rather if lower level players are more like that conflicted state where they're like, oh, what do I do? And they've got that midfrontal theta pattern that's emerging like very strongly versus expert players, if they have this just like natural instinctive response, like just go get the ball or rotate this way or do that, do this. And if that reflects in their brainwave patterns by having a smaller midfrontal theta pattern.
That seems to me like if mastered and you're able to apply that to a game like Rocket League, that would be the most important thing that I think one can get good at while playing the game of Rocket League, because you only have 5 minutes unless it goes into overtime to win the game. And I notice even specifically when I play the game, it's literally a game of exactly kind of how you just described that, is like, do I go right and try to go for the ball? Do I go left? Do I just go up the middle? Do I pass the ball to my friend? Do I try to shoot here? Do I go off the wall? Like, it's so fast paced where you're only given like split seconds to come up with the decision that you're going to make before you do it. Yeah. And in a game like Rocket League, if you commit to like going a certain way or trying to hit the ball or doing whatever, you commit to it, you might really mess up, or you might really do something beneficial for your team. Or that seems like that, if applied to Rocket League, would be one of the most beneficial field of studies for that game specifically.
Yeah, and if we can get it right too. There's still a lot of issues that we're working through, you know, data pre-processing, data cleaning, making sure we're getting good data to feed into our models that are doing this analysis, making sure that that sort of pattern really does carry over to Rocket League. You know, the fact that there's a lot more going on in your brain during Rocket League than there is during like a research study where you're just basically in a dark room staring at a screen. You know, we're trying to figure out all those pieces. And, you know, I wouldn't consider myself at this point in time an expert in that sort of brain stuff, but I'm learning every day. I'm reading papers. I'm reading, you know, watching lectures from respected researchers and trying to figure this all out. And then actually going out and doing the work, collecting the data down at Lackawanna College, analyzing it, and, you know, trying to make sense out of all this.
Wow.
Dude, that's a crazy life to live.
Yeah.
This is insane. And this is like your life right now, huh?
Yeah, this is my life right now. This is, you know, sports training and optimization has been my life's work since I was 12.
Yeah.
You know? Like, even when I was in high school, I was a basketball player. You know, maybe I wasn't doing brain analytics, but I was constantly playing with my own training. Like, what sort of drills could I do to get better?
Yeah.
If I implement this instead of that, how do my skills change?
Yeah.
You know? And, like, one thing that I'll give an example of that I used to do with, like, ball handling drills and dribbling drills in basketball was I'd always carry around a pair of gardening gloves. And I would wear the gardening gloves while I did the ball handling drills, because what that would do is it would take away my sense of feel and touch. At least it would numb it a little bit. And so that would make it a lot harder for me to do these drills. And then when I took the gloves off, it was, you know, a lot easier. The ball felt like it stuck to my hand.
Yeah.
So I'd like constantly be playing around with these different things and these different ideas and trying to push myself to get better. And I think that's just extended on now into my professional life as an entrepreneur, as this software engineer, as a data scientist, trying to find ways to push this field to the absolute max.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of exactly like how you're describing your trial before of like the invisible car and the sensitivity. It's like you're
adapting.
It's like a handicap. You're trying to give yourself a handicap to play with that, when taken away, would amplify your ability. It would just make you a little bit better because you're used to now playing with, like, I think it's pretty funny because I think most of the time, or a lot of people that play like video games always tend to have a messed up controller. So I wonder if that's like that could similarly be applied. Like you have a little bit of stick drift. Like if you could play with a little bit of stick drift, would you be better if you had it without stick drift or like something like that? It's pretty interesting.
You know, have you ever noticed, like, I don't know if you guys ever were, you know, basketball players or anything, but if you ever noticed that you find like the best basketball players, the best shooters, they can play on anything, right?
Yeah.
They're not just playing on like these professionally done courts, swapped or you know, mopped up and everything. And they can go outside on like a shitty court with like rocks everywhere. Yeah. The ball's just like falling apart. It's like not even pumped up. It's raining outside. It's windy.
Double rims.
Double rims. And they're still just like, maybe not quite as good as on a regular court, but they're still pretty cash, you know? Yeah. And I think that plays into it a lot, you know, that it's just they've learned that ability to adapt.
Yes.
So they haven't just learned this single technique to do over and over and over again. They've learned how to adapt to different conditions.
So go ahead.
Is there a point when you're applying this type of technology and understanding to a specific craft like Rocket League or basketball? Is there a point where you have to isolate some of the most important components of the game so that you can get some of the most desired results from a player or from, like any individual? So like if it was basketball, you'd probably have to analyze passing, shooting, dribbling, stuff like that. So how did you do that with Rocket League?
So are you speaking about the brain analytics or in general?
So in terms of trying to enhance a player's skill set in a particular craft, you know?
So, Yeah, so I'm a big believer that if you can break down a skill, especially more difficult skills, that can help you learn a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to learn how to reintegrate that back into the whole thing, into the whole context of, of the whole skill and the whole game, and being able to do that while you're making decisions and while you're reading the defense and reading where your teammates are and all that. So you got to be able to bring it all back together at the end of the day. But I am a big believer in being able to break that stuff down, especially for lower level players, so that they can focus on that and then gradually increase the difficulty. Now, from the brain analytics perspective, having skills broken down like that, I think also does help with the analysis, because if you're just looking at a raw game, right, and there's so many different things going on, there's all that noise that's going on in your brain, and it's like it makes it a lot more difficult to be able to pull out those patterns.
Yeah.
But if you isolate a specific skill in a specific scenario, that makes it a lot easier, I think, to be able to analyze that.
What's cool to me is how potentially universal this technology can be.
Oh, yeah, to all things.
If you figure it out with Rocket League, you can apply this to any sport now, and then possibly into other skills that are just necessary in a person's life. This has opportunities to enhance a lot of stuff.
And it's funny how transferable like everything is. Like I know we were just talking about basketball. And,
True.
And one thing I learned from like playing baseball in college was like make practice so much more difficult than like the games.
Yeah.
Right. So when you get into the games, you don't have to worry about like all that difficult stuff. And it's kind of like the same with Rocket League in the sense that like when my guys do training, they're not like doing the training just to get through it.
Yeah.
They're making it very difficult on themselves because like when you look at like the rings map, there's people who like I've trained like as friends to get better.
Yeah.
And when I watch them train, they're just going through the training just for the sake of like getting through the rings map. And they're like, oh, like I finished it and I only died like 5 times. And I'm like, that's cool. But like you're still not very good in like aerial department. So like, and I think what this training is forcing people to do is like you have to make it harder on yourself. To where, like before it was like you have to make that mental adjustment to be like, okay, like I'm going to make this harder on myself so that way I will get better and not like just be comfortable and just like coast through it.
Yeah.
There's a quote that goes, sweat more during training, bleed less during war.
Yeah, there you go. So now, like, for these, like, training styles that you guys are coming up with, do you guys differ? Oh, I'm not even gonna be able to say that word. Do you guys like separate between the ranks? Like, do you guys try to like make, say, for example, the ring map that you were talking about? Do you make that easier for, say, a platinum or a gold than you would for like a diamond or a champ, and then like a grand champ and a legend? Like, how do you guys go about like making them, or just, I guess, just choosing their difficulty level for each rank?
Yeah, and I mean, in the sense of like general Rocket League, he'll elaborate a little bit on like the difficulty settings that we've or that he's implemented for that. But like if I was training like a gold player, and they were going through like the same like rings map, like I would judge their stuff differently, and I would give them different advice than I would like a champ player. And you can kind of tell the difference between like their ability. And if I told the gold player like, hey, you have to be doing these things that these champion players are doing, they're going to struggle. But if I was like, hey, like you're doing this, the platinum players are doing this, this is what you should try and focus towards.
Okay.
And if you want to talk about more of like a...
Yeah, so one of the thing with our, 6-minute abs program on our blog that Austin sort of split up was he had, for some of the packs, the more difficult packs. Like I think it was
5.
Right?
Yeah, 5.
Where he had, different, he had a breakdown, like if you're below this level, do this pack. If you're between this rank and this rank, do this pack. And if you're above that rank,
do actually, this. Yeah, I knew this already. This is the video that we were watching that you guys are describing. Was it the video? We were watching a video about it.
About this?
I think it might have just been about like one of the maps that they were talking about, but they did decipher between the actual difficulty ranks. Now, like for like you guys, where are you guys polling, like, for example, like gold and platinum players? Like, do you guys get people like that in your esports organization? Or?
Not really, no. I'm sure like if like next semester, if we had 3 recruits that were gold, like I'd be able to work with them and like help them like train and develop. But like the players that I've coached like on a personal level have been like probably like between like gold and champ. Yeah,
because I was gonna say it would seem like it would be the most beneficial to like take exactly what you guys are doing, but work with like somebody who's never played Rocket League from the ground up to just like gradually see over time how they progress. But I would imagine in this specific field, it'd be very hard to gauge like beginner players. Because like, where do you guys find beginner Rocket League players from?
Yeah, and it's tough. And I think even in the ranks, like there's a website that shows like the breakdown of like all the ranks from like bronze to like SSL.
Yeah.
And there's less players in bronze 1 than there is SSL. And it's
really?
So like
that sounds crazy.
And it's weird, like the rank distribution, because like a lot of the people will start out and they'll be like bronze 3 or like silver. So like you might start out and you might never be a bronze.
Yeah.
Automatically get
how
silver.
awful do you got to be a bronze 1? Like that's crazy. That's insanity. That's like playing freshman football in the NFL. Like that's like, it's insane.
Kyle, where do you think that this can go? What do you see the trajectory of this whole thing going? Because it has potential to do some revolutionary things.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So from the founder, what is your perspective? Where do you think this thing can go?
Well, I mean, it's always a difficult question to answer as a founder, right? Because you want to say, well, of course, we're going to revolutionize the world. We're going to change the world. And I'm going to be on that poster over there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to stay humble and stay down to earth and realize, okay, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So, yeah, what's my goal? What's my hope for this? I want to completely revolutionize the way that athletes train for performance and how they understand how their brain is affecting the way that they make decisions in live matches. And then I want to take that a step further and apply it to police force training, military training, musical training, even like with a musical instrument. Like if you ever played like an instrument like piano or something like that, there's a lot of brain activity that's going on, and trying to figure out how you can optimize that adaptation in your brain, I think is another really interesting application potentially of this. And, I can go on and on. Actually, when I described this to someone, as when I went to that first meeting at the Lackawanna College Venture Lab and said, hey, I got this idea, I don't know how to start a business. One person said to me, could this be used for entrepreneurs?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel, especially, I've become a little bit more comfortable now that I've been doing this for a couple of years with like doing like meetings and conversations with people and such. But especially when I started, like the brain activity was definitely different. Like I've definitely made some adjustments to that, and that was kind of painful too to go through that.
Sure.
It was just very uncomfortable. But I think the same thing can apply to that you're under pressure, you have a presentation to give or a pitch or whatever it may be, and being able to control your brain so that you can think more clearly, more reflexively, not let like nerves and emotions get the best of you. Like I think all of that can play into this eventually.
That's incredibly fascinating, and you're doing all of that as we speak. You have to develop understandings in neuroscience now. You have to learn that field. You have to learn entrepreneurship and business skills. And with those two things, and I'm sure there's more.
And Rocket League.
And Rocket League. There is an extreme amount of information, probably information overload.
Absolutely.
But one thing that I find interesting that I often think about, and hopefully I can learn more about in the future, is this idea of neuroplasticity. You can rewire your own brain, and you could teach it things, and you could introduce it to things to internalize concepts. And almost create a new brain. To create a new create a new thing. Which I think is interesting.
One thing I wanted to ask you, and it's kind of like a bit off topic, but have you ever done any of this testing that you do for like Rocket League on yourself while you're trying to figure these things out?
Absolutely.
It would be very interesting to me to like be able to see somebody like I mean, I don't understand it enough, but I guess I could just say like your brain waves while you're studying the specific thing that is calculating your brain waves, if that makes sense. It's kind of paradoxical, but.
And another thing I'll add to that too, which hopefully this doesn't go too far off topic, but another application that I'm really interested of this, and at the same time, I've got to keep myself grounded, right? And be like, okay, I can't just do everything. I got to at least take it piece by piece. But another really interesting application of this, I think, is being able to find the brain activity patterns that correspond with optimal learning and skill acquisition. Right? So not sure if you've ever heard the quote from Kobe Bryant, but he said, it's not necessarily how much you practice, it's how present your mind is during practice. And I'd even take it a step further than that, and not just presence of mind, but there's certain patterns, I think, in the brain that can correspond with higher degrees of learning, skill acquisition, and all that sort of stuff. I think I've seen a random study a long time ago, and forgive me if this is completely off base, but I believe there was certain like theta patterns in hippocampal regions in the brain that were corresponded with greater skill acquisition and learning. But so one of the things that I've had an idea for with this as well is like being able to use it as a sort of like feedback device as you're practicing to tell you like, hey, your brain's not in the right state, the optimal state right now to learn and to acquire a new skill. Do this exercise or this meditation, or just even just recenter yourself, just bringing it to your attention so you can mentally focus back on the task at hand and try to like keep you in a more optimal state so that you can learn faster, more effectively.
I, as a creator, would literally kill for something like that. Because there's certain days, and I battle with this in my personal life pretty much all the time, but there's certain days where you are just so, like, present. You're so dialed. Everything seems like it's going right. Like, your ideas, your work, just physically, everything's there and everything's running smoothly and perfect. But then there's other days where, like, similar to, like, what you're saying is, like, you just can't get over that, like, mental road bump or whatever it is. Like, you don't really feel like doing this, or, like, you feel lazy, or your keystrokes aren't valid today, so you're like, damn, I don't really want to be typing this out, or I don't feel like preparing for this or editing this or doing that. But like other days you really do, like you're on top of everything. That's something I've never really understood in my own life. But if we can master that in our life, sign me up. I'd be the first person to be a test dummy for that.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy might be the future of AI.
Yeah.
What if we do that? Like, what if that really is a thing? And what if we can just completely biohack ourselves?
But then I think like it would go back to like kind of like a ground zero where it's like if everybody had it, everybody would be back at the same playing field, and then it would be like, what's the next thing? Like, how do we then level up again? It's like I feel like if everybody had that capability, we would all be like Neanderthals again, and like we'd be back at square one trying to have to figure out like the next big like thing that we could do to become better at certain things.
That's a good point. I agree with that, but I also think that does like shift creates a new normal.
Yeah.
That's higher performance.
Yeah.
And so if we can do that, if we could create a new normal where there's no longer as much of a differentiator between, you know, the highest guys and the middle guys, whatever, but that new normal, that new baseline, that new average is shifted higher, then I would hope as a society or as a community for Rocket League, or basketball or whatever, that it's advanced the field. You know, it's advanced in Rocket League. It's advanced the game. It's made the game better, more enjoyable, more immersive for the players. As a society, if we have people who are being more productive on average because they have these sort of technologies and like biohacking type stuff, then hopefully that helps make the world a better place, right?
Yeah.
Overall.
So do you think that you have used some of this technology in your own learning? Or do you think it's just the way in which you practice, or the way in which you decide you want to learn things like coding or like neuroscience or whatever it is, psychology?
So like, have I used the brain analytics stuff?
Yeah. Or have you used any of these specific techniques to develop your own understanding of things?
Well, as far as the brain analytics stuff goes, not really, because it's not quite there yet.
Sure. Yeah.
We're still doing a lot of research on it, still doing a lot of processing and programming and figuring stuff out. Like I said, there's a lot that needs to be figured out. So I try to stay down to earth with it and say, like, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I have used a lot of different, like, tips and techniques that I'll hear about to try and, like, optimize my performance, my focus, whatever it may be, like meditation. I'm a big believer in meditation and visualization. I think it's helps out a lot in everything from basketball or sports performance to giving a presentation. I just had a pitch deck presentation about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Before the presentation, I was meditating for 15, 20 minutes. And I felt a lot calmer giving the presentation. I think I would attribute it to that. Maybe not, but that's what I would attribute part of it to, at least. So,
Austin, what do you think? How much of sports development is what's going on in your brain versus what can be controlled with like how you could develop a mindset?
So I think from my personal experience, and I've kind of learned this throughout like not only life but like sports and then esports and coding as well. But like and this is a problem that I've had with like some of my players, but like being okay with failure and losing is so important. And I think you can apply that to, like I said, not only life itself, but like even like jiu-jitsu, like we kind of talked about. It's like it being like that white belt and being like, okay, like it's fine to just go in and get like smashed for a few months. Then you start learning and you're like, okay, like I got to keep doing that. In Rocket League, like for the championship that we just lost, like I tell my guys, like we're going to go back and watch these replays. And they're like, oh, like I don't want to go back and watch it. Like we got stomped. Like, but that's the most important thing. And that's where you learn. Like when you lose, you learn. When you fail, like you're only like failing if you let it fail. But like if you learn from that, like it's progress.
Gaming is like historically known for like the ill like mental capacity of like its players just always exploding or being like
the rage.
Yeah, like the rage. It's like, and I believe me, I was there. Like I've broken countless controllers, countless tables, keyboards, just being a dumbass. But how do you like, as the coach, like how are you making sure that your players have that idea instilled that like we can't be really acting like that? Like you gotta focus on your craft, and obviously like passion and emotion, like it exists within all crafts, especially sports. But like, how do you like get your players to like keep a level head? Because I would imagine I lose regular like competitive Rocket League games and I get pissed. Yeah. I can only imagine what it's like if you lose like a big like event like that. You know what I mean?
And it's a long process. It's kind of because last semester we lost in the quarterfinals, and that hurt. And I think now they're starting to learn that, like, you know, like we have nothing to lose. Like we get to that point, like we've already lost. Like we've been there. Yeah. And I think it's just a matter of experience. And one of my players, like I said, he's a younger guy. He's a freshman. So he's just been through. He's pretty eager. Like he really wants to win. And I told him the other day, like it seemed like when we lost, he was getting like frustrated. Yeah. And I think sometimes that could be like misconstrued with like passion. Yeah. And I'm not saying like he was like super frustrated. He got up and walked away. And in my head, I was like, oh, he just looked like really frustrated. And I thought about it for a little bit, and I just thought like, no, he's just super passionate about it. And I think being able to control that, and like I think in a big game, like it's okay to be upset after a loss, but like tomorrow, like we're gonna go through and learn from that loss. Yeah. And I think over time, like you just kind of get better with dealing with it.
I think that's a big piece of enhancing your skills as well in any craft or sport. It's not only breaking things down into technique and repetition and all those things, it's also your own individual philosophy. And I think a lot of what sport is in a way another form of representing life. You know, there's difficulties, there's people who are better than you, worse than you, there's opportunities to demonstrate who you are and what is your character. You know, so a lot of enhancing can be just shifting your perspective. Yeah. You know, and just adopting some new philosophies on how to react to things. So that's interesting. There's a good yin and yang there.
Becoming more mature.
Yeah, for sure.
Kobe Bryant once said that sports is the greatest metaphor that we have for life.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that. I mean, sports and competition and those sorts of ventures in general, like they give you a different taste of what reality really has to offer. You can't be very comfortable when you're playing a sport. It doesn't like really exist because somebody's always coming for you. Somebody's always chasing you or trying to be better than you, or you always have eyes on you in competitive settings. So you really got to learn fast. Like if you're serious about what you're doing and like what the steps you're going to take are going to be, and like, how am I going to get better? And there's so much that goes into it, but how are you guys, applying this into your program? Like, how are you guys applying what Kyle is doing with all his work, and how are you guys applying this with your players and yourself, if you are?
Yeah, so it's honestly not only just like the players in the program, but like Rocket League itself. Yeah, I think honestly, like the training packs that we're doing and the things that we're learning are going to be applicable to like the entirety of like the Rocket League community, and that's something that like I'm super passionate about, and like not only like esports but Rocket League specifically. It's just like pushing the boundaries of like training and getting better. And I think like we kind of talked about like nobody's really doing kind of what we're doing right now. Yeah. So I'm very excited to kind of like keep furthering that and like keep pushing the training packs. And I know there was, I don't know if you want to talk about like the situational training pack or if you want to keep that kind of. Yeah, no. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So there's something that he came up with. So it basically like replay scenarios, but in a controlled environment. So like now, like I'll go through my players and we'll go through a replay, and I'll be like, all right, this situation right here, this is something that we have to work on, and there's no like way for us to like recreate that. You can go into a training pack and you can kind of work on like some of the similar concepts, but like the only way to do it is get back into the game, and then when you find another similar scenario, you go back and look at it and see what adjustments you made. But what he's working on is taking that specific scenario and playing it back, and you can play that same scenario like, over and over and over. That's
interesting. I know I was talking with my friend Brian about it because I know he actually did your test, and it was something that we were talking about, that like when you're playing the game of Rocket League, there's so many scenarios that come up where in like at glance, like me being like a Diamond 2 or a Diamond 3, you would think there's no fucking way he could do that. But then like in certain games, you'll do it and it'll be like a once in a blue moon occurrence where you just do something really crazy, but it works. And then there's other times where you try to attempt the very same thing and you completely fumble. And that happens most of the times. But then there's like a lot of like just really random occurrences where I blow my own mind with things that I do in the game that I know I wouldn't be like. It's like the classic thing, like you couldn't do that again if you tried 1,000 times. Like how do you recreate those certain abilities or things that happen in the game? But I guess that's like what you guys are working on now, right?
I think specifically like with my guys, like I'll isolate certain environments. So like if I want them to, like for my higher level guys, if I want them to specifically work on air dribbles, like we'll go into a custom map and like I'll have them specifically work on that thing. And there's kind of like modifiers where like you could change like how fast and like what direction the ball's coming from. So like you're doing the same thing. And at first I'll have them do it with like little to no variation. So it's the same thing over and over and over so they can get used to like doing that thing. And then I'll kind of change the modifier towards like a little bit different. So now they have to adjust and like adapt to like the different scenarios. And then like once they get into game, they'll see that scenario and they'll be like, all right, I worked on this a lot. I worked on different scenarios. It's a little bit different in games. So then you kind of keep working on that until you get better with it.
Is there like a responsibility for you as like a coach? And you don't typically see this in like actual real physical sports where the coach more or less is just a coach and the players are the players. But do you have like a responsibility as a coach of an esports team to be very invested in understanding the game yourself and like being able to perform and play yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I played at Misericordia, and our coach at the time was like, I think he was like a silver. He had like never played the game before, but he played soccer. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like very like transferable, but I think I absolutely have like a responsibility to have like a higher understanding in the game. And I think one of the most difficult things for me was like stepping back from playing to invest more in them. And I got to the point where like they started getting better than me. And I was like, oh, like I just need to play more. But I was like, that's a good thing. I was like, I had to kind of put my ego to the side to be like, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is my job to like kind of progress them and push them like past the boundaries. And I thought about it and I was like, now that they got better than me, like that's good. Like I'm doing my job and they're getting to that point.
I always hear that coaching, at some point in coaching, no matter what it is, it could be like a martial art, it could be just a regular sport or esports. At some point in coaching, you notice like a level in like your game changing over time where you get a whole lot better just through the act of coaching, which is kind of where I was trying to go with that. I was wondering if you've noticed anything like that in yourself, where you hit a point where maybe you're like taking a bunch of knowledge from all these other people, like all these different people that you're coaching, and maybe you're applying it to your own game or whatnot. But do you feel as though like over time your knowledge of the whole thing has gotten better?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can kind of apply it to anything. It's like the best way to learn is to like teach it to somebody else. And you kind of develop like, and I have one of my players was like platinum when he started. He's just on the brink of champ right now. And that was just from last semester. And kind of going back and revisiting like the very basic concepts that make like a platinum, diamond, champ, GC player, and really like getting into like all the different ranks and like what makes them different ranks and what you need to do to like keep getting and pushing past that. I think that's absolutely helped me with just like my overall game knowledge. Yeah,
that's interesting. So now like with esports in college, like is it something that they do like scholarships for? Do these people get picked or do they kind of just like, is it like the walk-on deal? Like do you guys like, can you have anybody just apply to like come to your program?
Yeah.
Really?
And we do, well, we don't do scholarships right now, but it is a thing. It kind of just depends on like funding and like the budget and everything. And that's something that me and the director have talked about looking towards implementing. But that does exist. And it's cool because like they don't really work. Like esports isn't directly governed by like the NCAA. So like Division III institutions, like you can get scholarships for.
Oh, wow.
like
for
Awana
esports and
College
everything.
gives scholarships for esports.
That's sick.
Yeah,
That is
which
really
awesome
cool.
too.
I mean, there's so much money to be made in gaming, and I think people are finally coming to like realize that. And even in esports, I think more like specifically though, like content creation blew gaming like to a all new high. Like you can make pretty much no matter who you are, you can make so much money just playing video games online for people to watch. Like there has to be a realization, at least in today's day and age, that like times are changing. You don't necessarily just need to go to college to be a doctor or a lawyer. You can go to college and you can take up your passion of playing video games, and you can make a lot of money doing that. So I definitely think it deserves the proper funding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really quick. So going back to creating scenarios so that you're able to better identify and react in a game time setting. So I understand how that would work, but I'm curious to know if there's any way to introduce the element of pressure into these simulated scenarios, because I think that that's one of the most important aspects when it's crunch time, when the clock's getting low, when you have 5 seconds left, you need an important goal or whatever. How can you introduce pressure into these scenarios?
Yeah, so there's almost like two different ways I can answer that. So number one, which is more in line with what you're asking, I think, is we can have metrics, right, and make it competitive. Give you a score. So you could say, like, you know, in these scenarios, if you score in the other team's goal, you get plus 10 points. If you get scored on, you lose 10 points. If neither happens, it's, you know, neutral.
Yeah.
Run through 30 scenarios, and whoever has the highest score, let's put a leaderboard up there, you know? So it gives you a sense of pressure, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're competing. So now there's a little bit more on the line. And you can do things, too, like, I don't know exactly for the scenarios, but, like, one example is if you've ever done Coco's aim trainer.
No.
So in Rocket League, there's an aim trainer where it's basically a wall, and there's a little square, like a target that you have to hit, and you have to hit the ball into that target. And what it tracks is it tracks your streak. And at first I thought that's a really dumb metric to track.
Yeah.
You know, like streak, that's really stupid. And I don't know if this is what they had in mind when they did this, but I thought about it, and I'm like, well, you know what, that's actually good in the sense that it helps build that resilience to pressure, right? Because now you hit a couple shots in a row. Now there's more pressure because you're like, oh, shit, I just hit 2 in a row. I want to hit the third one. You know? If I miss it, it's over. I got to start back at 0. So that sort of simulates that aspect of pressure a little bit. Now, on the other side of things, there's other things that you could potentially do to try and improve your resilience to pressure without necessarily adding that pressure. So there's one theory in like sports psychology that the reason people choke under pressure is because they turn their attention inwards towards the movement. You know, they start to like try and make things too perfect. You know, they try to adjust it too finely. So if you're shooting a free throw and you're under pressure and you're sort of thinking like, okay, I got to keep my elbow in, got to, you know, and then you're going to screw up because you're thinking about it too much. You've turned your attention inwards instead of just letting it flow. And so one thing that I've seen, there's a guy named Rob Gray from Arizona State. He's a professor, and he has his own podcast and everything. He talks about a lot of this stuff that we're talking about with sports training. It's a really great resource to look into. But he has a paradigm, I'll call it, where as you're shooting a free throw or making a golf putt or something like that, you'll give them a second task. So you'll have like a beep, right? And you'll have the beep be either a high pitch or a low pitch. And you have to, as you're doing the task, as you're putting or shooting a free throw or whatever, you've got to say whether the beep is high or low. Right? So it gives you a second task. And now his theory is that by doing that, or at least part of his theory, hopefully I'm not butchering his paradigm, but the way I interpreted it at least was his theory is that by giving you this second task, you're sort of preventing yourself from being able to shift your attention inwards, because now you've got to keep your attention on the beeps while you're doing it. So it becomes more just natural doing it without thinking it. So as you sort of practice that becomes sort of more autonomous, that you're not, it prevents you from getting into a state where you begin to turn your attention inwards and start focusing on your form and start to try and like perfect it too much. It keeps your attention outward.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that is.
That's a really cool idea that I never heard or thought of.
Yeah, I never thought about it like that.
I don't take credit for it again. Rob Gray, Arizona State, very great resource.
I'd like to see some research or results done on that as well, because that's a very, very bold theory to have.
I think he's done some papers. I think he's published some papers.
That's really cool though. But I mean, there's no denying that pressure is indeed its own dynamic. It completely can change the results of a game or a test or anything. Yeah. So I think it would be really important to implement some sort of pressure. Maybe you put some money on the line. You bring Brian in. Brian will perform like an absolute animal.
Yeah, like an animal.
Put some money on the line.
There's also another added pressure, like when there's people watching. Like if you're playing like in an NFL game, you have 60,000 people watching you. Like that gotta be a trip.
But going back to jiu-jitsu though, I was told that one of the only real ways to improve is to compete, because in a competitive setting, more is on the line, and you're more reactive and instinctive.
Yeah,
and you don't have the relaxed approach of just rolling in the gym.
Yeah,
you're going against a guy you've never met before. You don't know his style. People are watching. His coaches are there. Your coaches are there. Your girlfriend's in the stands. His girlfriend's in the stands. A lot of shit going on. So you got to be really dialed. But that, in turn, could lead to some reflecting after the match, and it can introduce you to maybe where your flaws are, or what you did right or what you did wrong. And that could potentially lead to some real improvement. I've even noticed it myself, like rolling with Mike Krisnavich. Shout out Mike Krisnavich. Before a competition and then after a competition. I'd whoop his ass right before the competition, but then he would learn a lot.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like he took a whole lot from the competition. He would come back and it's a different dude.
That's like something I could specifically tie to Rocket League, because I know like there's been countless times where I just like hopped on Rocket League casually, and I got on, I seen like, oh, there's a tournament in 3 minutes. I didn't play like a game. I didn't warm up. I didn't do anything yet, but I could hop in like a tournament and perform way better than I would if I just hopped on to play like casual, to just play casual Rocket League. So I was wondering, like, what is that? I guess that's the same thing that you guys are talking about, but that's interesting. I always wondered that with Rocket League specifically, because that happens to me so often, where I'll just randomly hop on like 7:30, whatever, 8 o'clock, and then a tournament will roll around, but I wouldn't have played at all yet. And then I'll get on and I'll play really well. Other days I'll get on, just play casual, and because that's typically what I'll do to start, is like I'll just play a little bit of casual, warm up, play competitive, but I won't do nearly as well like my first 2, even 3 games I'm playing casual that I would have if I just hopped on and randomly got into like a tournament game.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because like the way I look at it is, it's like there's like casual in terms of like taking it more seriously. There's like casual, and there's like the tournaments, and then there's like competitive.
Yeah,
and I think it's just nice because I think so many people worry about like MMR and like their ranked points.
Yeah,
that way, like when you go into the tournament, it's like competitive.
Yeah,
but there's not like a lot on the line. Like,
yes, if you lose, it is what it is.
It's in that competitive environment where like you want to progress and you want to win.
Yeah,
I think competition also draws out the best in you as well.
Yeah,
I think the best way to see how skilled you really are is to match you against an opponent that's just as skilled, and to see where you can perform. But then there's, like what you were saying, there are certain athletes or certain individuals who practice crafts who, for some reason, get caught in their head. I was one of those people.
Me too. Yeah.
I got caught in my head a lot, and there were so many different factors. I think for me personally, it was constantly thinking that there was people in the crowd watching me and judging me and analyzing me, and I was afraid of being judged on my performance. I think.
Yeah.
And I had a very similar experience, like playing baseball at Misericordia, and like when I was in high school, like I was good, and like I wasn't like in my head, and like I could play like freely and do whatever. Yeah. And I remember like my coaches were like, oh, like you have a chance at like starting as soon as you get in, and which was like unheard of, like up there. And then like when I got up there my first year, there was a guy that was like All-American, like he was one of the best like, ever to come through the program. So I got to learn a lot from him my first year, and I felt super confident going into my sophomore year. But then like something happened where like I just wasn't like the same mentally, because our coach like expected so much perfection from us.
Yeah.
And that got in my head, and I was like, I need to be perfect every day, all the time. And I didn't fully understand that concept of like being okay with failure and being okay with like losing. And so that really prevented me from like reaching my potential. And then I got to the point where like I didn't play my junior year either because I had the same issue. And then my senior year, like I didn't play either. And then like 2 weeks before senior day, like I was like, I hate this. I'm miserable. Like I wake up every day and I'm like, oh, I got to go to practice. Like, and I hate it feeling like that. So I ended up like quitting like 2 weeks out from senior day because I was like, I don't want to. Like I felt like I was like so much wasted potential that I almost felt like embarrassed that like to go out there senior day and like not have like ever played. And that was like a big hit on me, but that taught me a lot about life too.
Yeah.
That taught me like what it was like to get to a point and like not work hard and like get in my head too much. And that was the result. It was like not playing for 4 years, and I had to like learn that the hard way. But that's like if I had to do it all over again and not play, I would, because it taught me a lot about like myself and life, and like those are concepts that I try and like teach to other people now.
Expectation is like another weird form of pressure, like we were talking about before, because that seems like that was kind of part of what that was for you. It was like this really high expectation somebody sets for you, so that can also get in the way of like, or that can get into your own head, I guess you could say. Like, I feel as though I'm supposed to perform way better, but then I'm not performing as good as I think I should be. It could be expectations you put on yourself too, but what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that I think for me, it was expectations that I put on myself, that I, and I wanted to prove to myself and to everyone else that I could do it, that especially because I had high aspirations. I've always been kind of pie in the sky, even with paralytics, right? And I'm talking about how I want to change the world. But when I was a basketball player, it was like, I'm going to go Division I, I'm going to go to the NBA, and I'm going to get there, not because I'm that good now, but because I'm just going to work my ass off and I'm going to get there, And people said I was crazy. They told me, you can't. It's just not going to happen, And that would piss me off. And I'd be like, I'm going to show you. I'm going to work harder than anyone else has ever worked before, and I'm going to get to that level. I'm going to show you. And I'm going to prove that to you, and I'm going to prove it to myself as well. So when I stepped down to the court, I had that expectation, that high, insanely high bar that I'd set for myself, and that pressure to try and prove something to myself and to everybody else that was constantly holding me back. And I remember one time when I was in 10th grade, and I started on the JV basketball team, and I was like the sixth man on the varsity team. Yeah. And I had a game where the first quarter in the JV game, I didn't play the greatest, but I said to myself, I was finally like, you know what? Fuck it. Yeah. Like, I'm only in 10th grade. I've got a lot of time to improve. Whatever happens. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to still get to work the next day, and I'm just going to keep working to get better. I got a lot of time. And I finished that game in the last 3 quarters. I had 26 points. So I had a pretty good game. I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. The next game, actually the very next day, because we had a postponement, so our next game was the next day, and our star player missed the bus. And our coach had a rule, if you miss the bus, you can't play. Yeah. So now we're driving down on the bus ride, and one of my friends goes to me, he's like, you're going to get the start for varsity. And I'm like, oh, shit, I am. Yeah. I'm like, oh, fuck. I don't know if I'm ready for that. But I'm like, you know what? I had a good game. Yeah. We also happened to be playing the team where my trainer was from, and his sons played for the other team. So I'm like, okay, I had a really good game. Yeah. I'm just talking to him. He's going to be there watching me. All right, this is going to be, I'm okay. I can do this. So I went to the JV game. I played the first quarter of the JV game, had 10 points and 2 assists. So I was like, I was just flowing, right? I was making all my shots. I was making all the right reads. I was playing like I felt like I was capable of, but I had never actually been able to achieve in a game. And so I played the first quarter, and then they took me out. They put me in the locker room for the varsity game to prepare. And I'm like, I'm feeling good now. I'm like, all right, I got this shit. I got this. Tip-off happens. I get the tip-off, pass it back to our point guard. We're running a play. I'm like, all right, here we go. I did not score a single point that game. At halftime, I remember I made a bad pass to the top of the key that got intercepted, and the guy went down and dunked it. And I was just like, oh my God. So then after the game, I was completely right back to square one. Yeah. Right? Like, I was torn down. I was like really upset, disappointed. I was like, man, I suck. I can't do this. They're right. I'm never gonna reach.
That's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
It's the worst
just
feeling.
Like that self-doubt in your head, especially to start to feel a little bit of, I don't want to call it success, but a little bit of like feeling like, okay, I'm making progress here, and then to have it just all come crashing back down and just like, man, I suck. I'm not going to be able to be right,
Individualized expectation is like such a fire, because it can like fuel you to be like the best version of yourself, or it can completely burn you down.
Another tough thing with that too, though, particularly for me, was that I used to place my own self-worth on my performance on the field. Yeah. So if I did poorly, I hated myself. Yeah. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror, bro. It went from a love relationship with me in the game of football to a love and a hate relationship. If I did good, man, I was the man. I went to school, cool, head held
varsity
high,
jacket on,
talking to the girls. I did bad. God forbid I dropped the pass. Coach was yelling at me at the sideline. Dude, you couldn't catch me. I was in the shadows,
back of the class,
just,
headphones.
Man, just not feeling terrible really. Yeah. So it's like we all went through this, but has anybody here successfully figured out the antidote? Like, how do you trump that? How do you get over that?
And I think I just saw that with my players recently. Like, we finished our regular season, and we were 7-1. We lost the first game of the semester, and then we won everything from there on out. We ended up placing first in the division. And I remember telling them, like, you guys have improved like immensely from the start of the year. So then we go into playoffs and we're playing the 8 seed, who like we stomped in like the middle of the year, and we're feeling confident. Like they were talking about like the semifinals and the playoffs, and like we had issues with like all 3 teams that we were playing throughout the season, and like we played all of those teams like quarterfinals, semis, and then finals. And I remember like we dropped the first game to the 8 seed. And we were like talking so much smack about how we were gonna like stomp them and then like go throughout, and we dropped the first game, and I'm like, all right, like, they just shoved it to you. Yeah. And like you guys have to make a mental adjustment and get back into it. Like you be confident, but like you have to respect them. Yeah. You have to respect what they could do, and they ended up winning the next 3 games, and we advanced to the semifinals. But that kind of goes along with the thing. It was like they were feeling a little overconfident in themselves, and then they got brought back down to reality, and it was like a quick turnaround. So they had to figure that out for themselves, and if they didn't, like they would have just got in their heads, and they could have got that series. So
that's interesting. So as a Rocket League coach, do you find that you have to take an authoritative position, or is it more relaxed because of the gamer setting? Because you'll be on a football field, or you'll be in the weight room or a basketball court, and the coach is like, "Get back, get on defense." Like, is that you, or are you just like letting them go?
So it was a little weird for like my first year, and I remember like as soon as I joined and I started coaching, like I went through this weird transition of like I said, like playing to like going to coaching. And I remember like the first practice that we had, like we were going through, and I'm like setting everything up, and I was like, all right, like we're gonna do this and this. And I remember they warmed up, and I was like, all right, like you guys feeling like 2v2 or 3v3? And one of my guys was like, well, I don't know, you're the coach. And I was like, you know what, like you're right, like this is what. And then from there on out, I started getting better with like being like, this is what we're gonna do.
Right, being a
leader.
You
guys are gonna do in this, But like it was weird because like it was my first year, so I didn't want to like come in and be like super like authoritative and like make them hate me. So it has been a little like relaxed, but I've already had a conversation with them that like next year it's gonna be I'm going to be a little bit harder on them because I want the program to be legitimate. Yeah. And like I want esports to not be looked at as like, oh, it's not like a sport. It's kind of like just esports. So I kind of want to like not only legitimize the program, but like legitimize esports as a whole.
That's really cool, man.
It's cool to be open about that.
The legacy is on your back right now.
Yeah, for sure.
In a way, which I think is interesting. And we're kind of pioneering esports in the area. Yeah. If this whole thing takes off, I mean, shoot, where can we take this whole thing?
I mean, esports in general is on a crazy rise. I would imagine like you guys don't have much of a curriculum to follow, right? So it's kind of like up to your own discretion of like training and what your practices are like and how they're going to be, and maybe like the length of them. Like it's pretty much all up to you and what you deem to be fit, right? Yeah. So how do you develop that? Because I know like for me, I was always somebody who really loved playing video games, but at the same time, I really enjoy creating content. So I always like mix the two as if like, and we hope to get into it at some point, but being able to create gaming content, I don't know if I would be able to force myself to take me playing video games serious on a sports level. Because like when I play video games, it's to have as much fun as I could possibly have, like with my friends, whether I'm like just trying to enjoy myself for a couple minutes here or there, like just I've played video games my entire life. But what I'm basically getting at is I can't see myself like playing Rocket League the same way with the same amount of seriousness I take, like, for example, like running this whole thing. You know what I mean? So like, how do you bridge that gap? Like, do you ever get players that are more like, you could tell right off the bat they're more or less just casual players, or is it like something within like the individual that like, is it competition? I don't know what it might be, but like, can you typically tell when these people could be developed or molded into like actual professional players?
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of their ability to just be competitive and enjoy the game. Like we have a guy right now on the team who plays like a ridiculous amount. Yeah, like, Jimmy, like he just plays all the time. Like he'll be in there at like 2-3 a.m. and like he'll play nonstop. And there's guys like that. And then like it's tough to get people that that aren't as always like committed to that one game. Like they want to like branch out and like do other things. And I think there's it's a difficult time with like, because I can't force them to like only play Rocket League, and they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do outside of practice. So like, and like I kind of see that, and it's funny because like whenever I go on Discord, like I could see what like my players are doing. Yeah. So like I'll see like if they're playing Rocket League or if they're playing like whatever.
Cooking mama.
But yeah, like there is that sense of like taking it seriously and almost treating it like a real sport. Yeah. And I think like for you, like especially with football, like you were probably like you go to practice, like you go home, like you're watching film, like you're watching NFL games. Yeah, man. That's kind of like how it is for my guys. Like if you're super into it, like all right, like you're playing at practice, right? Yeah. And then like, you go outside of that and you're playing like you're training, and then you're watching like the RLCS games, like the pros play, like you're watching content on YouTube, and it really just depends on like how motivated you are to like get better and just if you really enjoy the game.
Those guys, like the RLCS players, are a different breed of motherfuckers, man. Like those guys are like, I've heard like plenty of times that like the prime for like a combat fighter, for example, like the prime years are like anywhere from like 28 to 35. But I always hear for like video game players that it's a much lower bar, and it's like typically like your prime is like when you're like young, like not even college yet, like 14 to like 17. So like that kind of sucks for esports, that like you never like will ever really get that window of like a player's prime.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of like CRL, like Collegiate Rocket League players, like there's, like I was telling you, there's like the Champions League. Yeah. Like there's players who were like high SSLs like that could be pros, and I think even if you look at the pro scene now, like there's a lot of older guys, like and when I say older, I mean like 22, like 25, like, which is weird to say, but like you do see that. So I think a lot of people say it just based off like reaction time, like as you kind of like get to that, and I'm sure you could probably speak more like in more in depth than that than I can, but that's generally the perception is like when you're younger, your reaction time is better. And everything. So
is that true though?
Elaborate on that a little bit more.
I believe so.
That's true. I don't know.
I've only heard that from a couple different like professional players.
Really? I actually had a friend of mine who I went to high school with, who ended up being a professional Counter-Strike player. And I remember him telling us in high school, he was like, "Yeah, you know, by the time I'm like 24, 25, my career is going to be over. Yeah, because like my reaction times are going to start to slow, and it's just going to be over." Now he's like 26 now, I think, and believe he's still playing. Yeah. But still, you know, I have heard that idea.
I've really only heard of that specific idea in the realm of like first-person shooter games, but I would imagine it would apply to a game like Rocket League.
I mean, yeah, like Rocket League is crazy in this, and I know we talked about it before with like the difference between like lower-ranked players and higher-ranked players, and it's like the rate at which you make decisions and like your confidence level dictates like the entire lobby.
There's no other game that does it like Rocket League does, in my opinion. Like I don't play like such a crazy variety of games competitively that like I can really get a gauge for it, but I don't think any other game, like I've been a huge Call of Duty player my whole life. They never did anything to the degree of like the ranking system that Rocket League provided, like from literally like the foundation, like the building blocks, all the way up to like a professional player. It's so like measurable, like the different levels of players and like getting better in different areas. And that game, Rocket League specifically, unlike any other game I've ever played, it's so measurable, which I really do enjoy about that game. Because that's like part of one of my favorite things is like setting goals and like trying to achieve them. So like me, like I'm somebody who doesn't take playing Rocket League like super seriously, but like every time I get on Rocket League, like my goal is to try to improve in some way. Because like that is one game. I'm kind of like that with chess. Like I'm not a huge chess player, but every time I play chess, I try to like just get a little bit better. Because like you can really, and chess is another game like Rocket League in that sense where you could really get a gauge pretty much every day that you play, like getting a little bit better in certain areas. I love that about those games.
So when you say like, do you play ranked a lot?
Yeah.
So when you say get better, do you mean like improve like on an individual level or like rank up?
Yes, because I'm somebody who like, I believe, and again, like this might just all be ego, I believe I'm a very good player, but I know I lack in a lot of areas. And specifically like I'm a very aggressive player. So like in a team setting, like I know this when I play with my friends a lot. Like a lot of my friends get mad with how aggressive I play because it's really stupid sometimes and it messes me up a lot. I'm sure, as you know, like with aggressive players, but it's also my biggest strong suit. Like it's the biggest thing that like gives me an edge on other players is like how quickly I can do things that other people can't do. So like that one specific thing is kind of counterintuitive for me. So I've been recently just trying to like play a lot more fundamentally. So like every time I'll get on, I'll try to like just do like rotations better. Like try to just not be such like an asshole with the ball or with boosts, and I'll like try to let my teammates do their thing. And like, I don't know, every time I get on, I know like there's like, you can go way deeper than that. There's very like specific like game situations that I get involved in sometimes that I like know that I'm not that good at. So like I'll try to improve those when I get on as well.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I've seen, especially like in like coaching the team and coaching people like on a personal level, if they're more worried about ranking up than they are improving, they're going to improve at a much slower rate.
Okay.
And so I go in and I see people, they're like, oh, like if you're champ 3, right? You're right there. Like you're so close to GC. And you kind of go in, you're like, oh, I'm just going to like go in, hop right in rank. And like, I have to get that rank.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to improve. You got to go in. And I remember I was probably, at this time, I was probably like diamond 1 or 2. And I completely remapped my controller.
Yeah.
Like I changed all my buttons, like all my controls. And I was like, all right, like I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to improve. And I went into ranked. And I completely tanked. I went down to like plat 2.
Yeah.
And what I found was once I got more comfortable with that, I immediately ranked back up. And I was at like a champ level. Like just changing it. But I had to accept that like I was going to go in and lose in ranked to improve that. And I think when you go into ranked, like that's why I said like the replays are so important, because you go back and look at it and you see like what you're like deficient at. And I think too, like you said, that aggressive play style, you kind of learn how to play around your teammates. And like, especially at Marywood when I play with the guys, like I know what everybody's play style is, and I know how I have to play around them if I play with them. Like if I like my natural play style is a little bit more passive, and like team oriented. But like with like Jimmy, he's very like super aggressive, goes for like the crazy mechanics, and I have to change my play style when I play with him versus when I play with somebody that's a little bit more my play style.
That's interesting. So like this is kind of off topic, but more involved in what you were just saying. Like how many players do you have?
5.
So are you trying like different combinations of players? Like do you guys play 3s? I'd imagine like 3s for the most part. That's like the competitive Rocket League game mode. So like are you trying like new combinations of players with different play styles to like try to get the best like bang for your buck, I guess you could say?
So like, I have my 3 main players that are GC. And those are the only ones that start for like the main like league and tournament games.
Yeah.
But kind of like more applicable to what you were saying is like they all have like their own little like
role,
like what they're good at.
Yeah, okay.
And at first, like when they started playing together, they didn't really mesh really well.
Yeah.
And they kind of had to find like who did what better.
Yeah.
And, like so we tried out some different play styles and different like rotations around each other, and now we're starting to find like that next step for us. And offensively, like we're really really good.
Yeah.
And like looking back at that last series, like we realized that like. On defense, like we're not as strong.
Yeah.
So now we have to go back and we have to revisit that. We have to say like, okay, like how are we going to fix this? Like what expectations are we going to place on each other on the defensive end that we did for the offensive end to make us a more complete team?
What's the most competitive Rocket League school in the country?
For school, I think.
Or team, maybe.
I think the most notable one that I know is Northwood.
Isn't that who you just played?
No. We play Hood.
Hood. Okay.
Yeah. I know, like, especially for, like, I've seen some pro players come out of there, and I know for, like, my league, NECC, they're normally, like, at the top of, like, the Champions League.
Yeah.
So, like, that's probably the most notable school. I don't know if they're still the best, but I know, like, there's, like, the West Virginias. Like, it's some of the schools that are, like, that do have, like, more funding.
Yeah.
And, like, they can afford, like, the better facilities.
Yeah.
And, like, players are going to go there, and they have much more players to, like, pull from.
Is that where the top players exist, from, like, within the schools, or are these guys just...
Mainly orgs, right? Like I was gonna say, like like organizations. Like NRG is probably the best Rocket League team, right?
NRG,
not anymore. Like they used to be, and so what happened is like they were so far ahead of like, they had a reign where like they were winning like everything, and they were considered like the greatest, and like these players were like the best of all time, and they were just ahead of like the skill curve, and then like looking at competitive Rocket League, what you saw happen was like everybody kind of caught up. And now they're on the same level. So like NRG was like here and everybody was kind of chasing them. And now the gap kind of shortened. They're still getting better, but like they caught up.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, oh, they're so washed. They're so bad. But it's not that they're bad. Everybody's kind of like caught up.
And who's NRG? What are they about? Like, do they have their own facility?
Like,
do they
think of like FaZe.
It's a pro team. It's a pro team.
Yeah, think of like FaZe. So like, do you think there'll ever be a point where like the schools will have the upper edge on like the organizations like FaZe, NRG, those kinds of people? Or do you think like
Probably
the funding is just way higher for them?
I don't honestly think it's the funding. I think it's just like looking at it like these guys are professionals.
Yeah.
Like, this is their life. This is what they do every single day for hours and hours and hours. And like if you're in college, like it's not really like achievable in the same sense as like a professional.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because on the opposite end of that coin, like for every like professional sport, like Americanized sports, you have to go to college. So like obviously like in our day and age, you don't have to go to college to go to a team like NRG. You don't have to, but in like other sports like football and basketball, baseball, you have to go to college.
Yeah, and it's funny. Actually, I just wrote a paper on this about like a lot of kids will go to schools just for that. And I forget who it was, but there was a couple years ago, there was a kid that made the quote. It was like, I didn't come here to play school. Like, I came here to play football, right? And it's like that's kind of the concept. And there was kind of like a big debate on like if players should get paid in college. And that was kind of like, that was what I wrote my paper on. And I don't think that they should get paid, and I think it would cause some problems if they did.
Really?
Instead, what I think would happen that should be implemented is that there should be leagues and like organizations in place to where like if players really wanted to out of high school, they can go to these like leagues and like training camps that would prepare them for like that professional level.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like playing video games professionally is really synonymous with going and getting a degree. You know, like if you're good enough to go play in like the top leagues, it seems like that would be what you did instead of going and doing it in college, you know?
Especially with gaming, because if you're that good, I would imagine you can figure it out elsewhere. Like the internet is so vast, and like what you're able to do now with like, just for example, we were talking about it earlier, like content creation. If you're somebody who's like really good at playing video games, you just gotta be a little funny and you could just go start making videos. Like there's so many like different alleys that you could take gaming nowadays that like you don't necessarily just need to be a professional player.
And I think especially for esports, like say like you don't want to go to college, right? And you're just really good at a game, like, and you get to like that professional level and like it doesn't work out, you could still make content, and you're gonna be with like the top like 0.1% of players. You're gonna like be able to coach people and do things. If you look at it in more of the sense like traditional sports, like you do that, and like you're not going to go stream yourself like hitting off a tee for baseball. Like people are going to come watch you, and like the really only option you have is like go
coach
creative
people
enough. Or like I guess you could.
I was like like being like taking like a broadcast role with like one of those big like Fox or whatever, and like do like the sports analytics or whatever, where you can like do like a podcast. Like I know a lot of UFC fighters nowadays, like they'll just go start their own podcast because like that's like a whole nother stream of like income for these people now. So it does seem like just with the internet, like there's more options for like people.
There's more
now.
like influencers too in sports, even like especially with the NIL, like the name, image, and likeness stuff. Like people are making money off of that in high school or college. You know,
it's crazy.
That's the
persona around that.
Yeah, that's the one area in which I kind of disagree. Where I think people should be paid is like what you're able to do outside of like college. Like you
influence.
Maybe like it specifically influence, because maybe you don't necessarily deserve or need to be paid or compensated for just your ability to play more or less than other people. But I don't know if you guys know about like Destroying. Have you ever heard of the guy Destroying on YouTube who played college football at UCF and got his scholarship pulled away from him because he refused to delete his YouTube channel? So like that's one area which I thought, like I was completely against the whole NCAA thing, like not paying people, because I thought in that case scenario, it's ridiculous. Like if you're able to still be able to focus completely and solely on like your academics and your college football abilities, and like obviously that's mainly what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to the NFL. So he's not going to like take anything away from the players or the team or anything, and still be able to like run a YouTube channel, create content, and get paid a bunch of money. I think the main problem that they had with it was just like, and this is just my thought, but like he's raking in all this money and they don't have any say or like control over how much money he's receiving. They don't get compensated for it, whatever. But that was just a completely crazy situation, which I'm happy they finally went away with that. And now you can get compensated as a college player.
I don't think I was clear enough right away. So that was on me, but like, now that NIL is in place, like I agree that should be in place. What I was referring to with like college players getting paid is like from the institutions themselves.
Yes, that I can kind of agree with.
So what would happen is like if they started doing that, like, what are the biggest money makers in college sports?
College football.
College football,
You're
right?
going to be paying certain players a fuckload a lot of money to.
So what's going to happen is like a lot of the budgets from colleges, they're going to have to start cutting other programs.
Yeah.
And so like they might be like, oh, like we have to pay our players like X, Y, and Z amounts, but like the tennis team and like the golf team, they're not bringing in the same amount.
Yeah,
so,
people
like,
will get fucked over.
Yeah.
I seen a post recently. It was like a viral photo going around. I'll try to put it here. Bing, if I can find it. But it was like there we go. It was like a picture of a side-by-side shot of like the LSU football locker room, and then it was like the LSU school library. And it was like the LSU school library had like 8 trash cans in a row. The ceiling tiles are all breaking above them, and it's like leaking water into these things. And it's like on the other picture, it shows you like the LSU football locker room, which is like this state-of-the-art like Avengers compound. Like it was insane to see like the vast difference of like where they're really putting the funding, which is like, I mean, I love football. Like I'm all for like if, especially if it's bringing your school a lot of money, ticket sales, season ticket sales, whatever, put it into football. But like, then you see like the library, like you have to go to college and your library looks like that. Like that's kind of fucked.
Yeah. And I think too, like you're going to end up taking like scholarships away from people so that way you can pay like your star football players like a few extra bucks. Like, and that's why I think NIL is like so important, because I remember when I was doing the research for this paper, I found, I forget the guy's name, but I think he was like a Division III like football player, and he was like a lineman or something, and he ended up making like 6 figures from like TikTok, like just making content on there, and he was able to do that through NIL. Yeah, that's just the thing, is like you can, like no matter what sport you play, like you're gonna be able to get these sponsorships, and it might not even be like you're getting paid like a ton, but like you might you might get sponsored by like a local like food, and like you're getting like food from there. And like I know like a lot of the big problems are like college students are broke and they don't necessarily have the money for food, and like sponsorships like that are gonna help like immensely.
So what is like the next step for you guys as a team? Like what is the current objective or mission like right now? Like tomorrow when you guys get back to work, or whatever day you guys get back to work, like what are you guys focusing on right now? Like what's the big thing, or what's the big like breakthrough you guys are trying to achieve?
So for Neurolytics, we're still doing the study, right?
Yeah.
So we're having people come in just about every day for that to collect more data.
Yeah.
And then, at night, analyzing the data, aggregating it into like a database. For this sort of partnership here with Marywood and developing drills for them, like I said, we have on Thursday, we have a scheduled session to do that sort of baseline and start implementing my training program for them. So like that's sort of my second job in a way, that I'm sort of building out those drills and those, because a lot of it too is powered by like analytics too, and in-game analytics, right? So like how accurate are your shots, how much power do you put on, things like that. So like getting to work, putting all that together. And I mean, I don't exactly know what your question was, but that's just sort of like.
Well, I think from my perspective, it's like at least from Rocket League, we're gonna try and like make the training packs and everything that we're doing a little bit like more complete. And I know like especially like some of the stuff we've done like with the situation and stuff, like there's still like things that need to be done. And I think it's just a little bit more of like legitimizing that and being like, hey, like this works, and we have proof that this works, and now just like making it a little bit more public and known.
So if you guys like master the training aspect of Rocket League, like where do you see that going? / like where do you see just the game of Rocket League in general going? If you guys can like amply complete, really,
I think changing it for sure. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's no real like training in Rocket League right now, like training programs like you see in traditional sports.
Yeah,
right? Like you look at traditional sports and like a professional basketball team or a baseball team or whatever, right? And they've got a shooting coach, they've got a defensive coach, they've got an offensive coordinator. Baseball team has a pitching coach, a hitting coach, everything you could think of, and they're all working on specific skills and specific things, and they're developing training programs for them. Yeah. Esports, why doesn't esports have that as much? Like it's
a good point.
Pretty much the same. Like maybe they don't need strength and conditioning. Yeah. I think strength and conditioning actually should be
might come in handy. Yeah. You won't want to break as many controllers if you do thumb weights.
Well, so there's actually like you talk about like plyometrics and things like that in like traditional sports, and like trying to make yourself quicker, your body more resilient to being able to absorb that force and then produce force, right? I believe I've seen some research years ago that actually showed that exercises like that, explosive exercises, plyometric exercises, things of that nature, actually have an effect on your brain as well.
Yeah.
So I think there is a huge untapped potential for strength and condition training for esports.
That's interesting.
And I think,
100%.
and that's something I'd like to get into too.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, not just in the sense of improving esports performance and helping validate that industry, but also in, you know, part of what I love about sports is it teaches you so many great life lessons and life habits, you know, and part of that is like physical fitness, right? So I think if you integrate that into esports, where that becomes a big part of esports training now, is to be physically fit and to have that physical fitness training aspect of it and developing those fitness habits, I think parents will be a lot more willing to accept that their kid is going to school to play a video game. I think overall, you know, you're going to see the health and well-being of the students increase, and I think that'll be a really important aspect of it as well. But yeah, so I went on a tangent there. But like I was saying, maybe there isn't a strength and conditioning coach right now for esports, but why isn't there training for these specific skills for shooting in Rocket League, for air dribbling, for flying? You know, and why isn't there a focus on that? Why aren't there specific exercises that you can do to develop that?
It's probably because it's so new that there's not enough like front runners in like being good at a specific niche of like a game like Rocket League. Like there's not, I don't think there's as many like aerial coaches as there is like wide receiver coaches out there for football. Like I think it's just because of like how new it is. Like I think over time people will realize that like they have certain like real strong suits, and hopefully over time, like as esports develop, like we'll learn that like maybe it would be better to take like an individualized approach. Like if I'm really good at like just fundamentally playing Rocket League, then you could be like a coordinator. Or if you're really good at like aerials, and maybe you can specifically help this guy who lacks in aerials get better with aerial shots.
Well, here's a specific exercise or training scenario that you can do to help improve at that.
And I think too, like for Rocket League or just maybe like, well, I guess specifically for Rocket League, like I guess you would really only need like a mechanics coach, like a game sense coach, and then maybe like a sports psychologist to go in and like handle like the mental aspect. And I guess you could go one step further and say like a strength and conditioning. And I really like that you bring up that point because it's funny, like especially in esports, like it's like the running joke that like esports players like never go outside. It's like go touch grass or whatever. And I think that is like so important because like, I remember I was watching like a content creator like way back, and he said like he changed his like what he did day to day. Like what he would do is like he would wake up early, like he would eat breakfast, he would go for a walk, and then he would come back and play. And he found that like if he would just like wake up, roll out of bed, and get on the game, like he was having worse results than if he would wake up, eat, go for a walk, and then come back, and then he was just in a much better like mental mindset.
I think with any endeavor, you have to have those things that like keep you grounded. Like you have to have something outside of what like the forefront of your brain is like focusing on. You have to have something outside of that realm that like keeps you level. Like just something else that like you really enjoy in your life that you can like put time, passion, and effort into. Because if it's just one thing, it'll get like that. Like it could become an unhealthy relationship in a way where you're just like giving everything you have to this one thing. And some days like it's not going to, you're going to have off days. Some days it might not feel as well. And, I don't know. It's just you definitely need to have things outside of.
A healthy organism will always perform better than an unhealthy one.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, like, I think, you know, just like in traditional sports, you know, you got guys who have sports psychologists getting their mindset right. They have nutritionists to get their nutrition right and eating well. You know, they have strength and conditioning, fitness, good fitness habits, you know, sleep habits. I'm sure that's not very good with a lot of esports players.
For sure. Especially Jimmy. Get to bed, Jimmy.
But rather than like specifically physical things, like I feel like those are all very tangible things that could be applied to esports that maybe are not being applied to esports. Things like nutrition, things like
that's a good point.
Like mindfulness, things like sleep, because all of those things definitely have an impact on just your day-to-day like function. So I would imagine like
levels, mental like clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Like nutrition and rest specifically. Like a lot of gamers, it's also like the running thing. It's like Mountain Dew and Doritos. It's your thing. But it's like I think like I've learned recently because like I've been on this big journey of like trying to like eat a lot better, lose a lot of weight, and like do those kinds of things. I've like specifically noticed and measured like the difference in like my brain function from what I used to eat versus like what I eat now. Because like especially like just like performance while like or after eating versus like being fasted, like just how much better you might perform if you're just better with like your windows of eating too. Like maybe not eating before an esports match would have you more focused than if you and the team went out for a dinner before the game and then like, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. There's individual aspects to that too, I think. Like, especially, definitely with nutrition, it's highly individual. And like,
for sure,
you know, in traditional sports, they'll tell you, if you have like a sports nutritionist, they'll tell you you've got to figure out like how your body responds to different foods, different types of meals. You know, if you're thrive on like higher carbohydrates, lower fats, or if you thrive on lower carbohydrates and higher fats, or some sort of mix in between there, you find that sort of optimal balance for you as an individual that gives you the most levels of energy, mental clarity, physical performance, mental performance, you know.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is. This whole conversation is blowing my mind so far.
To maybe get off of that topic a little bit, I want to ask Kyle, how is entrepreneurship going for you? And how do you plan on monetizing this whole thing as well?
Yeah, so great question. So entrepreneurship, it's been a journey and it continues to be a journey.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely, I wouldn't say I was naturally perfectly well suited for entrepreneurship right off the start, in the sense that I wasn't the best with talking with people. I wasn't the best to getting out and discussing my ideas or selling something to somebody, or I'm not very monetarily driven either.
Yeah.
You know, I'm more driven by progress and opportunity than I am about making money, which, you know, as an entrepreneur, if you're going to run a business, at some point you have to make money or the business is going to crater, right? But I, you know, I just like with doing the brain analytics or anything else, every single day I get to work to try and improve myself, to try and get better with it, to try and get more comfortable with it. One thing I will say as well is with being an entrepreneur, you really have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, that, and that was something that was tough for me. Like, I was uncomfortable a lot. You know, talking with people even was uncomfortable for me. It still kind of is. And
I'm the same way like you and think, like, we do this shit.
Yeah, like, so, like, when Austin told me, like, hey, would you want to come on a podcast? Like, my initial thought, that sort of, like, reaction in my brain from my pre-entrepreneur self was kind of like, do I really want to go on a podcast, talk with people? I'm going to look like an idiot, whatever, you know? And then I just sort of had that saying come back to my head, like, okay, I got to be comfortable being uncomfortable here. So I got to go ahead and just do it. And the more you do stuff like that, the more, again, you become comfortable being uncomfortable. It doesn't faze you as much anymore.
That's so applicable to like anything.
Oh my God.
It's life, man.
Yeah.
It's life.
He and I were just talking about that on the ride over here. Was just that, like what podcasting specifically and like our business and like how we operate, it never gets easier. Like every time it's like, you're throwing yourself right back into that fire. And it's like, how am I going to get over this? Like, how are we going to get through this? How are we going to make this as good as it could be? But like, just control what you can control. And that's like, that's the easiest thing to do, I think, is just like, do what you do best and just do what you can do. Don't waste countless energy and time just thinking about like all the stuff you can't control, like how good is the podcast going to do? How many people are going to see it? Like, what do the people think about the way we look or how we're talking? Like, you can't control none of that. So like, it's the best at some point to just create a wall, like a barrier, just let that camera do its thing and just, control the controllables. Like, let's just talk. Let's just have a conversation. But I was just like you in that sense. Like before we started this podcast, I had a really hard time talking to people and I still do. But like, if you go back and like watch our like first couple episodes versus now, like you can like tangibly see how much better I got at conversating. And it's just like you were saying, like you just got to do it. You got to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations, and you're always going to be uncomfortable. You just got to find a way to get better at dealing with those.
Yeah. So I would say that would be one of the biggest things that I've learned in this journey towards entrepreneurship. And, you know, I'm still learning, still trying to get better every day. But yeah, so far I think it's going pretty well. To answer your second question about how we're going to monetize all of this, the idea, there's kind of two different ideas, right? Again, there's a split between, you know, Rocket League training, esports training, and brain analytics. There's kind of two different things. They come together, but they're two different things. So from the Rocket League training specifically, what I have envisioned for this is a platform, right?
Yeah.
An entire Rocket League or even esports training platform, which I don't think exists right now, where you can have a library of drills or exercises for specific things. And maybe they're one time when I'm still trying to figure through all this, but maybe there's like, you know, oh, this is a free drill. You know, you can try it out for free. This is a premium drill. It's, you know, $2 or $5 or whatever, and you can download it if that's something you want to work on. And you can have this library of drills that you build up, and then you can have like an interface for creating your own training regimen and schedule from that, and be like, okay, I'm going to do 50 reps of this drill. I'm going to do this drill for 10 minutes, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to schedule that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever. Yeah. And maybe there's even an aspect to that where it can sort of recommend things to you. Like, oh, you want to work on your ball control or your aerial control? Here's the training regimen to do that. Yeah. And so it gives you all that. And then on top of that, you can have a subscription service with tiers for additional features like data analytics. You know, like maybe it gives you a profile with a dashboard of all your data and analytics during training of like, here's how accurate your shots were, here's how much power your shots were on average, here's where, you know, we have one drill where you're hitting into a target. It's like, here's your like heat map on the target of where you tend to hit.
Kind of like on a court. You ever see that on 2K where you're hot and where you're not so hot? Yeah. It shows where you're more likely to make a shot on the court. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So that sort of stuff, bringing that into Rocket League. And then maybe you have a higher up tier for like teams and organizations. And maybe they want some additional features like the ability to have this social platform for their players, for their teams, where they can all communicate together, discuss strategy, share training progress, training data, training ideas. And that team, like the coach, maybe Austin, can be remote and just publish to this platform. Like, okay, guys, here's what you're going to do this week. Here's like your training regimen, and I'm going to get the data from it to make sure, A, that you did it, and B, to see how you did it and how you're progressing over time.
Wow.
And to have all of that. And, and, you know, we can go on and on about other features. Like there might be some AI to it that's like can give you recommendations on like, okay, here's what you've been doing and here's how your progress or your performance has changed over time doing that. Maybe make these adjustments instead of maybe that'll make you that, you know, that'll help improve your results.
Yeah. Does that like does the AI aspect of this whole thing like worry you in any way? Like do you have like any inclination that like maybe sometime soon, like all of this will just be encompassed by like AI and algorithms and like they'll just be able to like perfectly replicate, like I fear for this like in all fields, but like your field specifically because it ties into like science and analytics and those kinds of things. Like, do you think it'll ever like get to a point, if not soon, that's like you might not even be needed for this. An algorithm could just do what you're trying to do for you. Because this thought really does worry me with all other things too, like content creation, music, art, books, anything.
There's one thing, at least one thing, actually probably multiple things, but there's one thing that comes to mind that AI does not have now, and it probably won't have for a very long time. That's creativity.
Yes.
It's not creative, right? We're always going to need someone to be the creative person here and to be able to design like these drills and to take, especially to like, you know, distill all of this really complex research that we're looking at in these white papers and distill that into a concept for a drill and then to actually sort of like design that drill and to actually test it with players and have them give you the feedback on it and see how it affects them and then to actually go ahead and implement that and publish that. So there is, I think, limitations to what AI can do. And I think that is why I'm not really afraid of AI sort of like taking over the world or anything like that.
That's like kind of the conclusion I'm starting to come to too, because I'm now starting to realize that like AI really only redistributes what we have given it. I'm like maybe at some point it'll get like all doomsday, kind of like what you were just referencing, like where the AI will take over the world. But I don't think I also don't believe that we're anywhere near that. Like I think AI so far can really only operate based off what we give it. So AI needs somebody like you before AI will understand what it's trying to do.
Yeah, and what AI typically is doing is just finding like really complex statistical patterns.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like even you see things with like ChatGPT and people are like, oh my God, it's so intelligent. It's thinking through all of this. It's giving like intelligent answers. It's like, no, really all it's doing is it's doing like pattern matching with words. It's like, okay, let's see, I saw these few words, and over in this article over here, those words appeared too, and they used that word here, so I'll stick that there. That tends to match. And it's so good at doing that that it gives the appearance like it's almost being intelligent and it like writes coherent sentences. But in reality, it's not thinking. It doesn't have any real creativity to it. You know, it's not, you know, we're far away from the doomsday.
Yeah.
And the newest thing with that, too, is like the Snapchat. Yeah, like that was like the newest thing. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean the AI is taking the world by storm. I just seen this thing recently that it was like, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but you guys obviously know who like Drake is, the rapper, right? So somebody recently, and I think that like there's an ongoing like discussion with this right now. I feel like they have a reason to believe that this was actually like an internal thing that they did. But a song came out recently by Drake and The Weeknd that was completely made by AI. Like it's a song, it's like a 2-minute song or whatever, but it's Drake and The Weeknd. And like when you it's all over TikTok. I'm sure you had to have heard that song. The first couple of like the 30, 40 seconds of the song like sounds exactly like a Drake song, which is like really freaky. Like for me, there's other, do you use TikTok at all? If, I don't know, I don't even know how it goes, but
plug me up to the Bluetooth me in.
I mean, yeah, they can't give us a copyright strike
for
a song.
It's a fucking robot.
AI, right? But I lost my train of thought. Fuck. Go ahead. See if you can find it real quick.
Interesting though.
First, I have to connect to.
Oh no. But yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy. What I was getting at though was like, there's other platforms. Like there's this platform that we just started recently getting into. It's called Descript. It's an AI that mainly works with like podcasts and like subtitles and audio, but it's like an AI that is basically like an all-in-one studio. So like you need things like this to record, obviously like mixers and whatnot to like actually record the audio. But now they're coming out with like softwares that it's basically just an all-in-one studio like on your phone through AI, where like they can, I was telling him about this one where you can like, for people like us, like we're already fucked because there's hours of us talking online. All you need is like a couple snippets of like people. Oh shit. This song sounds just like Drake, right? It's fucking weird. But this is all AI.
It's tough too, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys like Drake. I like Drake.
No, this is AI. Yeah, it's not Drake. But when they start singing, like skip forward a little bit. When they start singing, you could tell it's not them. Like that part, just cut it out. But like that's not Drake. You could tell that's not Drake.
I don't know. I might think
I knew right away when that part came on, like when they started singing, especially The Weeknd. Like The Weeknd sounds terrible, but that like start, like the hook with Drake, like that's already what they're able to do with this shit. Like where the fuck is that gonna go?
Yeah, and I know like one of the craziest things that I've seen are like the deep fakes. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure you probably know a little bit more about that, but like the deep fakes have been like
people.
Crazy.
Yeah,
right.
Like it's wild.
Yeah, like you could place any person in any setting and make them say anything you want them to say.
Yeah, which is crazy.
That's what I was just getting at with that Descript thing. Is like if you have like files of yourself just conversating with people out there. That's why I said like people like us are already fucked. Now you guys are fucked. Your voices will be out there. But I can, for example, like use this app Descript and like say I'm talking right now and it doesn't understand me say a certain word. I can plug the word that I was just trying to say in and it'll sound like me saying it. So that's going to get to a point, and I'm sure, like, I haven't messed around with it enough. I'm sure I could do this, but I can probably make myself say something completely different than what I'm actually saying right now. Sure, but it'll sound like me saying it live on a podcast.
You guys ever see, like, the major politicians in a Call of Duty lobby?
Yeah.
And they're, like, talking shit.
But, yeah, no, that shit's crazy because, like, I always think, like, as of recently, I wasn't thinking about it too much because, truthfully, I would prefer to just be the creator. I don't really want to use, like, AIs and stuff to like help me make better content. But I think like he and I were just talking about this the other day, like it's going to get to a certain point where you almost just kind of have to, or you're going to be left behind in a weird way. So I don't know. The AI thing freaks me out for sure. It definitely does.
I don't think it's as good as people sometimes give it credit for. Because when you understand like what it's really doing, it's kind of it's a little bit less impressive. It's still impressive, and all of the like mathematics and design and algorithms and all that go into doing that is crazy. Yeah, but it's still not the same as like actual human intelligence or human creativity. Yeah, it's not quite the same.
Which I definitely agree now. But like somebody who like you who like does what you do, like do you think there will ever be a point where it's crazily advanced?
Maybe, but I think we're very far away from that.
Okay.
What do you think would have to happen for you to be like, oh, whoa, like this is starting to get?
Some people are getting freaked out.
Yeah, I'm freaked out. If you guys couldn't tell.
Yeah.
But you're not in the space though.
Like,
this guy's really in the space.
What would have to happen for you to be like, well, that's
something
crazy.
For me to see like progress that I would be.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd always be skeptical because it's easy to to give the illusion of creativity, intelligence, things like that. But for it to actually have that, like I'd have to actually play around with something, I think, and be impressed by it and be able to like give it something abstract, or I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough question to answer.
Have you ever seen it create art? Have you ever seen the AI generated art?
Yeah, I've seen that.
How does that work algorithmically? You know, because that seems like sort of a creative endeavor. It's not just pulling words from an article, but how do you think that would work?
But it's really, at the end of the day, what it's really doing is just looking for statistical matches, right? It might look at other artwork and say, like, okay, this is the sort of like rough pattern that we see in art. Let's just apply that to something new, right?
So
let's just sort of tweak it a little bit.
Yeah. You don't think it can create anything truly unique yet?
I don't think it's there yet.
No. Do you think that there's a possibility for us to achieve, or for AI to achieve some sort of sentience? I don't know if that's the word, but you get
sentient. Yeah, I mean it
kind of goes along with I think it's like the Turing test. I think that's what
it
is.
Yeah, the Turing
I've
test.
seen like movies about that. It's like that's super fascinating to me.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're a long way away. Because another thing that an AI doesn't really have is emotion.
Yes.
Emotion.
I think that's a large part of human cognition, creativity, and intelligence in general. Now, I've actually wondered myself if there's a way to like model human emotions and sort of instill that into the computer. It would definitely make things much more complex.
Yeah.
I've never seen it done. I think we're a ways away from that ever happening. But even still, even if you give it like emotion or something and it's like a chat GPT and it can like say things, but it doesn't have like a physical body that can go out and destroy the world or something, like how much harm could it really do, you know?
It's weird because now with like my current understanding of AI, like it almost seems as though AI would in a weird way have emotions, because now they have an understanding of what emotions mean and why certain people feel the way they do about certain things. But I guess they have to pull this information from like the web or like online, so it's kind of hard to portray like emotion through the internet. But based off like description and definition of what it means to be upset or angry or sad or happy or whatever, I feel like an AI would have a good understanding of at least what those emotions mean to feel. I think like the big worry is that like these things will get to a point where they can just train themselves and then it's like endless. I think that's like where like the bridge is. It's like AI needs us right now. Without us, AI can't advance. But like I think the big worry is it would get to a point where it didn't need humans anymore to advance.
Isn't the way that doesn't AI model human learning, like in terms of neural networks and stuff like that?
So one of the like most common modern AI techniques is called deep learning, and that's just using a artificial neural network model. So it's kind of like loosely inspired by biological, like the biology of the brain and like biological neural networks, but the key word there is loosely. It's not fully modeling that in any way.
And I suppose you can kind of bring that back to Rocket League with like RL Gym and like what they're doing with like all their RL bots.
So like we've had conversations before with Austin and his players at Marywood about like the bots like next to and some of the bots in Rocket League that are getting like pretty good at the game and how those actually learn to get better at the game. And so like the typical sort of technique that is used to train those bots is they'll put them into like an environment, like a Rocket League environment, like a match or something, right? And they'll have inputs in terms of like where your car is, how fast it's moving, where the ball is, where all the other players are. And from those inputs, it's usually fed into like a neural network model. And all that neural network model is doing is basic arithmetic, basically. It's taking, those input numbers, multiplying them, putting weights on them, adding them together, doing some sort of computation on them, and just feeding all that forward until you get out to some sort of output, right? So how much are you turning the stick? How much are you pressing the jump button? Are you pressing boost? Whatever. And what it does is it gives it a reward every time it does something good in that environment. So maybe it gets a reward for scoring a goal or maybe making contact with the ball. I don't know exactly what they use, but it gives it some sort of reward for doing good things in the game. And it might give it a penalty for doing bad things like getting scored on. And then what it does is it runs through like an iteration of that match, and it takes those rewards and it uses it to sort of reinforce things that allowed it to get a reward. Yeah. And I guess de-enforce things that were causing penalties.
Do you have like any like specific like tangible things for like rewards? Like how do you reward a bot? That's like
so
I'm kind of
it's just
interested.
so it's mathematical. So it's like a function. So you might give it like 50 points.
Okay.
So like
that's insane.
Minus 10 points or whatever. And what it does, the mathematics works out so that it's able to look at how much, its current strategy and how much of a reward it gave it, and try to figure out what would be the best way to update itself to sort of nudge its strategy a little bit in order to optimize that reward and make it a larger number.
That's incredibly fascinating to see a game like that from that perspective.
Yeah.
When you strip it of all our visual aspects and just look at it from like a mathematical and just grid perspective. Yeah. That's insane that's actually how they work.
And one of the craziest things that happened was like these bots, like somebody found a way to get it into online play. And so like a couple months ago, that was the biggest thing is there because the bot is called Nexto. Yeah. And so the biggest thing throughout like the entire Rocket League community was like, oh, this Nexto bot is now in ranked games. Like you can go pay for it. Oh, wow. And play on your account against real players in real lobbies.
That's what I was just about to ask you guys before. Like, were you talking about like a plugin or like the bots that like Rocket League gives you? Because I was going to say like those bots are shitty. It seems like.
So like these bots will learn, like he was saying. And then like they went into like online play. And the really cool thing was that like people started to figure out what it could and couldn't do. Because like it was doing things that like humans can't do. Yeah. But at the same time, like it's obviously a bot, like it lacks like the creativity you were saying, and people were finding ways to get around the perfection that the bot was implementing. And I think it was that like they were in like GC lobbies because it was like a GC bot at the time. And now like a couple months later, people are developing like SSL bots. Yeah. And somebody made a video recently of like it was like a champ player, a grand champ player, then an SSL playing against this SSL bot. Yeah. And it beat everybody. Really? And the fascinating thing was then they brought back in a GC who has played against bots before and knows the tendencies of the bots, and the GC player beat the SSL bot because they know the tendencies of like the SSL bot.
I feel like that's short-lived though, man. It seems to me like the logic that bot or however that bot functions seems far superior than human creativity.
But for a short amount of time, though.
Really?
I mean, I would imagine. Like he was saying, like a human player was able to like recognize the tendencies of a bot pretty fast, so it would have to adapt.
And that was at a lower level too. So like they went back in, they're like, oh, like they're probably gonna take that game and learn from it to try and make it a little bit better. But if you took the SSL and you said like, okay, like play against bots for a month, right, and then come back and learn the tendencies, and then if they played the same SSL bot, they'd probably stomp it.
Like, what's weird about that though is because like if you watch film, like humans do the same thing. Like humans have specific tendencies, but I guess they're driven out of different things, like emotion or pressure or like there's more instincts. There's more effects placed on like an individual than there is a bot. But I would believe that both of them would have recognizable tendencies.
Yeah, so even like even when I go and like I play against like lower ranked players, it's like I don't have to like be as like into and intense. Like I know what they're gonna do most of the time. I know what their restrictions are. Like I know what they can't do, what they can do. So like I'll play a little bit lax, and especially like for my players when they're developing like the lower ranks, like I'll kind of like play at their level, and then when they show me that they're advancing a little bit, I'll have to like bring it up a notch. And it's the same thing with like
jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, sure. It's like I'll roll a bit, and I'll roll with like the purple belts, and they'll kind of like let me work, and then after a while they'll like put it on me, and now I'm on my back for an entire round. So it's like,
wow.
Have you guys ever heard of a TAS, a tool assisted speed run?
I love those.
Do you guys implement any of that? Because I don't understand it enough. I'm fascinated by people that speed run video games. So is there anything like that could be implemented into a game like Rocket League that's not necessarily speed run driven, but can potentially use an algorithm to figure out like best possible case scenario for like placement or timing or like accuracy?
Like the elements of Rocket League for like a task. The ways they do it is they like slow the game down. Okay. Like a ton. And there's like there's a thing called Bacchus mod, that you plug into Rocket League,
Yeah.
and it allows you to mess with the physics and like mess with the game itself. So, and this is one thing I have my players do. Like, I'll have them go into like free player training, and I'll actually have them slow the game down, so they can understand like what movements they're making and like where they have to hit the ball and like what they have to do to like execute like whatever. And then like you see clips of like people doing crazy stuff and like dribble maps like on the field. And this was another thing, because there's like the freestyle community. Yeah. And like people got busted a while back for faking their clips with tool-assisted speed runs, because they would do it like against like bots or whatever. Yeah. And they would slow it down to do these crazy clips, and they would speed it back up.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but they got caught. Yeah. And so like you could do that, but like, and it's good for training. So it's been very beneficial for my guys.
Yeah, the task thing is insane. Like the idea of a task is to try to break like a game down to like the best possible like scenario for a game.
Yeah. And I think I got really fascinated with Mario.
Yeah.
And I saw people do that and break down like the tool assisted speed runs, and it was a super fascinating video, because they were pushing the boundaries of like what isn't possible. Yeah. And like how to literally get it frame perfect to be the best that it could be.
And that's like hard, because a lot of those speed runs, like humans don't have the capability of being able to push like the extremes that some of those algorithms are able to do. Like I know like in zombies games, like Call of Duty Zombies is like, that's my favorite game of all time. But I found out about like the task through zombies, and it was like being able to see the things that people were able to do and how like frame perfect they were able to do it. It just like made me think that like with this like technology at some point, like, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's already like that now, but like humans just can't compete with robots in games anymore.
Yeah. Like think about chess bots.
Yeah.
Well, we can't fuck with a chess bot.
The chess thing was like, I think the first like real story of that. Like for a long time, humans were able to beat like the chess bots, and like, but now like chess bots, I think, are maxing out at like the highest rating ever achieved by like any individuals in chess.
3,500 elo or something.
Yeah, like something like that. It's insane, but it's like something no human has ever been able to do. So like, will there be an outlier that's able to maybe push the extreme? Possibly, but
and also far few between. Like it probably knows like every move possible on the board at all times. And like I guess like for humans, like you can take like a scenario and be like, oh, like I recognize like this scenario on the board, like I know like some different things that could happen, but the AI knows like everything possible that could happen.
Like there's people like, there's this guy named Hikaru who's like one of like the craziest grandmasters in chess like that are out there. He's a content creator, but like he's somebody who like photographically like memorized the game of chess, and even he makes mistakes sometimes. So like if he's out there being able to do it with like a 3,100 or a 3,200 rating or whatever he is, like there has to be, like if you're still able to make mistakes at that level, there has to be another boundary that could be pushed. And I think like with these robots and whatnot, that's what's doing it. But I always wonder if like we'll ever get to a point where humans will just be advanced enough to be able to do these things without the need of like robots to push the boundaries for us. I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, these motherfuckers' brains probably exploded back at home. So guys, this was a really fun conversation.
Yeah. Rocket League, life, the end of the world. We hit it all.
Yeah. AI. The next time we do a pod, all four of us will probably be robots.
Be robots.
So, yeah, guys, it was a pleasure to have you guys on. I would love to, keep hearing more about like what you guys are doing. Cause I genuinely believe, especially with like just the human performance aspect of what you're doing is like, it's super interesting to me, because I really believe like that could be applied to anything. That could be applied to what we do. It could be applied to driving NASCARs. It could be applied to literally anything. So I'm very interested to see when that goes. I hope one day you get a fucking like Nobel Prize or some shit.
Yeah. We'll the first appearance on the Go Getters podcast. Check it out.
But if you guys have anything like in terms of like social medias, pages,
articles, blogs, whatever,
articles, anything you guys want to shout out, you could mention it now, and then like before this comes out, I'll hit you guys back up. I'll plug it all in the description. But if there's anything you guys want to shout out now, go for it.
Yeah, so Austin and I have been working on a blog. It's called Level Up. It's on medium.com. Level Up Next Gen Rocket League Training. We've been writing articles. We're hoping to get like one a week. We've written some articles. Austin wrote an article on mentality, a lot of the stuff that we talked about, which is really good. We had the 6-minute abs article, which I mentioned before. We're posting some of our like betas for the drills that we're doing. We've posted a couple of them, I think. And that's definitely somewhere to keep up with our progress on things, and hear more about us and get hopefully some good ideas about how you can improve your Rocket League performance and also performance in other areas of life as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Guys, I really appreciate it. This was one of the most intriguing podcasts that I've ever done.
Yeah.
I must admit that I got some work to do.
Yeah, I should have popped 1 or 2 alpha brains before this pod.
So, again, thank you guys very much. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Thanks for having us.
Love you guys. Sub. Peace.
Wow.